that we've seen so much of over the last couple of days. Today they race in them, and it's proper racing as well. It's up and down all day. There's hardly any flat until the final 20 kilometres. Well, as you can see, it's another beautiful, beautiful day. Sun is out. People have been on the bike paths. 27 degrees, as you can see. It's a working Monday, so not as many people on the beach as we've seen over the last couple of days coming off to have a look at the cycling. Humidity 42% and a bit of a wind, west-southwesterly, 9 kilometres per hour. So after a start in Rapallo, we go up the Colle Caprile, up to 400 metres above altitude, then to the roof of Liguria, as Juan Antonio Fletcher described it, through Toriglia, up to the Barba Gelata climb, which is the first second category climb, the hardest climb after the 3 stages of this Giro d'Italia so far. After that, a very, very complicated descent, back towards the coast through more windy, narrow, difficult roads, and it's a finish just 20 minutes up the motorway from where we started. Sestri Levante, 136 kilometres, 2,300 metres of altitude on the day. Michael Matthews in the pink jersey to start the day. Blue jersey worn by Bert-Jan Lindemann. The white jersey being looked after today by Esteban Chavez, teammate of Michael Matthews, who's second in that young jersey classification at the minute. Matthews bossing both the general classification and the best young rider classification. Not in this shot at the minute, but wearing the red jersey, stage winner from yesterday, Elia Viviani of Team Sky. There's Stefano Locchio again, head out the sunroof. And the attacks were going to begin, and I think the attacks today were going to be chased and chased for quite a while. A lot of people wanting to get into the break on this stage, a lot of teams sniffing a stage win, given the fact that the general classification teams had a very, very nervy day yesterday, and knowing that it's a short stage, knowing that it's an aggressively raced stage, they could see a win at the... So everybody wanting to get in the break. Androi Sidermek definitely always up there at the front. Team Giant Albacete trying to get there as well. 94 kilometres remain. We've had a very, very big break up the road. Whilst we've been watching Giro Extra, I can tell you that Matt Stevens next to me has been intently following the break, noting the numbers, keeping a check on the progress. Where are we, Matt?
Well, we're well into the race. The break went as a very aggressive start, as you can see, but this is the breakaway of the day at the moment. They have a lead of around 2.5 minutes at the moment. The rider on the right from Team Sky, but we have 25 riders in front. We understand that Eduardo Zardini of Bardiani CSF has gone off on his own. Then we have 24 riders behind, and the only teams that aren't represented appear to be I Am Cycling, Nippo Vini Fantini, Lotto NL Jumbo and Trek Factory Racing. So all of the major teams represented. One from Agi Dezab, Axel Domo, one from Androni, which is Gianfranco Zizioli, Malakani from Astana, and we'll go through the rest of the riders in a couple of moments. But there's Diego Ulisi of Lampre Merida, so a very, very good combination of riders out front at the moment.
Diego Ulisi having a go then, up and down all day. It's very, very harsh of the organisers, only to categorise 2 climbs, I think, today.
Yeah, you could easily have had 3 or 4 other categorised climbs today, but it's a real sawtooth profile. But primarily, as well as being up and down, it primarily goes up. And then we have, the gap has actually come down now to 58 seconds, so some very aggressive racing. But a few riders who could pose a threat on GC. Ulisi, a very, very good rider indeed. Took a couple of stages, of course, last year, but now he's been joined by one of the riders from Canada, and that's David Villela.
Davide Villela, who is another of the young Italian riders. Ulisi had a horrible year last year, most of it his own doing, let's say. He was caught with a substance in his body that shouldn't have been in his body. He was subsequently banned, but he was given a bit of a light ban, really. Managed to keep his Giro d'Italia stages as well. He won 2 stages last year. I know that there's some fairly strong thoughts about that around at the moment. 93 Ks to go on stage 3. Sun is shining on stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. 93.5 kilometres to go. Tinkoff Saxo taking this up at the front. We wondered what would happen today in terms of teams wanting to control, wanting to have a bit of a day off and let the breakaway have their day. Matt Stevens with 20-odd riders up the road, none of them particularly dangerous at the end of a 3 weeks, we think. However, dangerous in terms of wanting to take the Maglia Rosa today and, of course, get a stage win. And if you do take the Maglia Rosa today, the pink leader's jersey with a minute's gap, let's say a minute and a half's gap, a decent gap, you could hold on to it all week. It's got to be watched, it's got to be monitored, even if it's just going to be controlled and not attacked from behind.
Yeah, well, it's again, we saw a very, very nervous stage yesterday, extremely nervous. There were numerous crashes for different reasons, which we'll no doubt we'll discuss a little bit later. But a few significant riders lost a bit of time. I think the most significant of the GC contenders was Domenico Pozzovivo of ʻdʒiːro. He lost 1 minute and 57 seconds. So it just shows how difficult and how nervous the bunch is. But when you have a short stage like this, as we see, the pre-race favourite, Alberto Contador. Now, talking about Tinkoff Saxo, of course, they rode a fantastic team time trial and then essentially rode as if they had the pink jersey yesterday. The back end of the stage, they set a very high tempo. The sprinters teams didn't really need to come into the mix until very, very late on. But what they do, they kept Alberto Contador out of trouble. And that's what's happening now. I thought we might see Tinkoff at the front. Didn't expect quite as an aggressive start to the race. But we've got two leaders at the moment, though, Villela and Ulisi, both very, very good climbers indeed.
Ulisi's the man at the front in the dark blue and fuchsia pink. This is Mr. Mihailov at the back, Nikolai Mihailov, who's riding the Giro d'Italia for the first time. He's noticeable because he is the Bulgarian road champion. Rides for CCC Sprandi Polkovice, who also have one of the big favourites for this stage if the breakaway wins up the front. Maciej Paterski, who's in great form. He's actually had to come and have a look at this stage. He saw the profile straight away, said he fancied it. And as you can see, a lot of climbing, though, all the way up to Barba Gelata. Doesn't really get flattened for the final 20 kilometres. There's Alberto Contador on a way past one of the pretty historic little towns in this region, actually, today. And it's got connections all the way as far as New York and around the world. Think back to The Voice. I'm not talking about the reality show telly programme. I'm thinking about The Voice. Frank Sinatra. His mother was born around here. Frank Sinatra, the great crooner from the United States. His mother born on this little section of road in one of the small villages that we go past. Natalia Garaventa, she was called. And it's in the little village of Lumarzo. I'm not sure we'll get it signposted to you, but 92 k's to go. There's our first look at Esteban Chavez, American from South America, from Colombia. And a really good team for him, Orica Green Edge, the Australian team. They've got a general classification project with this man. He's only 25, and they've got really, really good hopes for him up the front. Talking of everything up the front, this situation is changing all the time. Tinkoff Saxo monitoring things at the front. With them and Manuel ʻdʒiːro in this group now, Matt, would it not be the best thing for them now to just try and put the stoppers on anyone else joining the group?
I mean, it depends on the composition, but I don't think we'll see ʻdʒiːro do anything at all. I think he's just going to sit at the back, as you can see him there. He just slotted in. ʻdʒiːro himself, a really, really good all-rounder, can ride a great time trial, can ride really well on the flat, but can climb pretty well. But as you see, Tinkoff Saxo setting the tempo at the front just to keep Alberto Contador out of trouble. Because although for the next 20 or 30 kilometres the road primarily climbs, there are some very steep technical descents. If you have an opportunity to look online at the route profile, have a look at the map. It's very, very serious twisting, some very, very narrow technical descents. So they just want to keep Alberto Contador out of trouble today. But ʻdʒiːro, he's just going to sit back at the back of that roof.
Orica Green Edge have played it well today. Esteban Chavez up in this group at the front as well. Simon Clark in the group at the front as well. Behind they have the pink jersey of Michael Matthews, who would be a stage contender if it came back together again today. Simon Gerrans could go back into the pink jersey as well if it came back together today, because he's an interesting man to watch. As Team Sky also have quite a good presence up the front. That's Salvatore Puccio, who was there helping yesterday for Elia Viviani. And Puccio, we know, is a man who loves classics riding. He loves the hills. In the meantime, we've had a conversation or two between the number 21 Fabio Aru and Luis Leon Sanchez as well. Lots of argy-bargy, verbal argy-bargy between Tinkoff and Astana yesterday on Italian television. More of that in just a minute's time. But as we see, this group constantly developing at the front. 91 k's to go. We're going to offer a quick commercial break. Be back with all the news from Tinkoff and Astana in just a moment's time. Into the Ligurian hills that at many points seem to rise almost immediately out of the sea and up to those stunning viewpoints from the small villages that we're reaching today. Stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. Tinkoff Saxo, as Matt Stephen was just commenting to me in the break, riding as if they're leading the race.
Yeah, we saw this yesterday. I think it's because this race is so nervous at the moment. You know, possibly you'd like to think, if you're an Alberto Contador fan or Oleg Tinkoff, who perhaps is in the team car, he's going to be following the race for pretty much most of its duration.
He's the boss now, the boss in the sporting department as well.
He is. I mean, I don't know where this instruction has come from, but on the one hand, until the race settles down, and bear in mind the Giro, it never really settles down. There's another split at the front. Zardini, Paterski, ďiঃtaːlja and Fernandez now broken clear of the 25 rider move that went clear on the first climb. So we're seeing, you know, lots of changes, very dynamic opening few kilometers of this race, fragmenting all over the place, but lots of good punchy riders in this move, riders that can sprint well, climb well, do it all. It's the kind of utility riders that have got into this move. But ďiঃtaːlja looking pretty good at the front there. But
ďiঃtaːlja's a fast man at the end as well, the Swiss who's in the red and black there. On the left you've got Paterski who's in the orange, of course. This is Ruben Fernandez, who lost quite a bit of time yesterday, and he's seen as a future Grand Tour winner in Spain. He's just 24 years of age. He's a rider who comes from Murcia, which is the same autonomous region that's given us Alejandro Valverde. Now there'll be some collective sighs. I know he's not the most Mr. Popular wherever, but you can't deny that he's an excellent bike rider. Fernandez making his Grand Tour debut, though, without too much pressure. The youngest of the 11 Spanish riders on the Giro start list.
Yeah, I think the Movistar team, and this is an opportunity because they haven't bought Quintana or Valverde, they're going to be having a dual role, as we know, in the Tour de France in a couple of months' time, and that I think will be quite an interesting scenario to play out on the roads of France. I'm eagerly awaiting that situation. But this is an opportunity for the riders who are looking to the future to try and impose themselves on this race and take some time. And Movistar have no doubt will want to pick up a couple of stages in this race and also put somebody high in the top 10. I don't think they'll really challenge the overall in terms of podium, but I think there's a possibility, an outside chance that someone like of the quality of Herrada, Fernandez or Inchausti could potentially finish in the top 10 overall, which I think would be a good objective for Movistar. But yeah, some interesting riders up front. Bardiani managed to get 2 riders in that 25 rider split. BMC have got 3. CCC Sprandi Polkiewicz have 2 riders. Movistar I've already discussed. I've got 2, but interestingly, Lotto Soudal, got birthday boy Adam Hansen, one of my tips for the stages today, is also in the move there, and again trying to break his own sort of record too.
We said the other day, it's almost like a UCI rule now. You can't have a 3-week stage race without Adam Hansen. Always on the start line, and at the minute he's always getting to the finish line. Touch wood anyway. He's on the way to breaking records. He's got another full season, I think, until he's up there contending for the real record books.
Interesting formation on the front. You've got that Chris Juliensen just setting the tempo. He'll probably ride along with Tozzato and Ivan Rovny, who's sat third wheel. They'll be the riders that are basically dispensable. They'll be, for the first half of the stage, will ride, set the tempo, really as if this man, Alberto Contador, is riding in pink. You don't often see this in the Grand Tour. Normally it's left to the team of the leader to set the tempo. But here, you know, Tinkoff Saxo really imposing themselves on the race, really making their mark. As you see, ďiঃtaːlja is just struggling here to just regain contact with this front group. I think he's just done it there.
Well, Paterski there in the orange, he's done really well out of breaks this year. He actually took the lead of the Volta a Catalunya, one of the first World Tour races that he's actually raced in the last few years since he came over from Cannondale and went back to race in Poland. He's in the team that's returning to the Giro for the first time in 12 years. Paterski's now 28 as we have a look at Bert-Jan Lindemann, king of the mountains for one day. I don't think he'll be staying in that jersey at the end of the day. A third cat and a second category climb. Good for the sponsors, those who mentioned when he was on the podium yesterday that Lotto and El Yum have had a bit of a nightmare year. And it's about time that they gave their sponsors some return on what they've been having. Definitely their investment.
Well, a great sprint. I mean, obviously Marino Hofland was very close yesterday, put in a real surge. It wasn't quite good enough to match the sheer pace and power in the last few metres of Elia Viviani, of course, but they'll be very happy with the second place on the opening sprint stage and taking a jersey. I mean, remember the slow motion picture of Lindemann as he crossed the line, punching the air with delight. Got myself a jersey for at least a stage in the Giro d'Italia. In the Grand Tour, very, very important. And again, but there's definitely going to be a shift in terms of where the Maglia Azzurra goes today.
It was a good watch yesterday, wasn't it? It wasn't down on paper to be one of the big stages. It was almost like the collective intake of breath and relax after the chaos that is the team time trial stage 2. As we see the feed zone and a couple of people out there giving out beatings and what have you. Lots of people on the side of the road. Another village turns pink as we go through Italy, and that's what we did see yesterday until we saw the crashes at the end. I mean, Michael Matthews picked up the pink jersey again. It's a 7th place and a bit of a failure in the end in the sprint, really, but it was good enough for him with the sprint going wrong. The Australian from Canberra now overtakes Cadel Evans as the nation's man who spent the most days in the pink jersey. That's 7 pink jerseys now for Michael Matthews, all of them coming in the space of just over 12 months. It's been a brilliant, confirming, if you like, 18 months of Michael Matthews' career after that great promising start and then almost disappearing off the radar for a while when he first went back to Australia after his time at Rabobank in Europe. He works very, very hard. I'm told he's a man who dedicates so much time to training and looking after himself well. Very, very serious, despite the big bling nickname that he was given as a youngster with all the funny earrings and what have you and the fashion sense. But he's going great on the road. He's the leader of the Giro d'Italia. Elsewhere, we've had a bit of a problem in terms of the crashes yesterday. We saw a lot of them on the screen. Don't want to dwell too much on all the injuries, but Peter Seri was the worst off that we saw. No fracture, thankfully, for Peter Seri, who didn't finish the race yesterday. It looked as though he'd done his collarbone. He has, however, injured ligaments in his shoulder, which sometimes, as we saw with Tom Bonan, can be worse than actually breaking the collarbone itself. So the upshot of that for Etixx Quick-Step is that Gianni Meersman no longer has to share a room. But, of course, it's very disappointing for Rigoberto Urán. Didn't have too many men in the hills, and Peter Seri would have been one of his best men.
Yeah, when you look at the composition of Etixx Quick-Step, there's no doubt that Seri would have been, one of the main allies or the main lieutenants for Etixx Quick-Step for Rigoberto Urán, specifically, of course, in the high mountains, because he's a very, very talented climber. But to lose somebody of such quality, of such value to the team early on, will knock the team. But I've no doubt, I mean, Etixx Quick-Step, they've got so much strength and depth across their whole roster that they'll galvanise around Rigoberto Urán over the next few stages. And as we talk about Etixx Quick-Step, they've got Tom Bonan in the break. Rode pretty strongly yesterday. We never expected him to win in the bunch sprints, but we wondered if he'd contest them, and he is. Great to see him at the front, but clearly in good spirits, riding his first Giro, and he's one of the riders that's made this move today.
Ruben Fernandez, the man we were talking about there on the left-hand side in the dark blue for Team Movistar of Spain. Mentioned he comes from the southeast, from Murcia. Eduardo Zardini is there in the light green for Bardiani CSF. Team still run by the Reverberi brothers. They've been around for donkey's years. 25 seconds this 4-man group has on the rest of the chasers. I think we total up 25 in the break, didn't we? So that's 21 behind them. And then a further minute or so back, you have the peloton at the minute, led by Tinkoff Saxo.
Yeah, it is an interesting situation on the road, but at the moment, given the time gaps are so narrow, this is something that Tinkoff Saxo can control. I think that the major obstacle of the day lies a little bit further ahead, and that's the second category climb of the Babigellata, which is 5.7 kilometres in length, average of 8%, but significantly at the bottom it ramps up to 12%. And given the fact they've been climbing pretty much all day, and the aggressive nature and the high tempo now being set by Tinkoff Saxo, although this stage is only 136 kilometres, there's going to be some very sore legs and certainly some opportunity for some riders. Either, I don't know whether we'll see a shake-up amongst the GC contenders as such, but people hunting for a stage win, I think we'll definitely see, arguably the most significant part on this stage will be the final climb of the day, and then the plunge down into the finish, then a relatively straightforward running down the coast to the finish line.
Much more calm at the seaside today. The Giro's gone inland.
That's tranquillo there, but it's certainly not tranquillo in the hills today, as we see Matteo Tessato take his turn at the front. Tinkoff Saxo certainly not missing a beat at all today. And you bear in mind, it's only on stage 3, already taking up the race. Interesting.
Tessato, the second oldest man in the race, as you see Roman Kreuziger, the Czech Republic rider, former winner of the Amstel Gold Race and the Tour de Romandie. At the back, Luca Paolini, who's lost one of his numbers.
Well, they're only stick-on numbers these. So if you've got lots of gels, and I don't know whether riders, well, you wouldn't really carry a gilet, but you do carry food. Well, it looks like he's actually
done the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, well, he's mixed. He's actually stuck it on and pinned it as well, but one has managed to pop off. But he rode exceptionally well yesterday. At or near the front, always rides out of trouble.
He's got the brilliant knack of disappearing. I mean, we might not well see him again for another 75 kilometres, and he'll pop up with 4Ks to go.
Well, a couple of years back, remember, he took a great stage and ended up in the pink jersey in the Giro himself. You know, he spent a couple of days in the jersey. But no, one of the heroes of Italian cycling. As we see, some more pink. The giant bicycle at the side of the road.
๊dʒiːro's giant bicycle. Don't wave too much, your boss might be watching. It's a Monday afternoon.
Yeah, I think he did phone in sick, actually.
๊dʒiːro then at the front. Not too much in terms of transfer today. This is one of those stages, I suppose, that Mauro Vegni, the race organiser, was talking about when he said it was a much more humane Giro. And he wasn't talking particularly about the parkour. He was talking about the transfers in the evening, not just for the riders as well. I mean, look at today. It's 20 minutes drive down the motorway from the start to the finish today. It's shorter, hardly a transfer to speak of in the first 3 days, really. Just naturally following the race route down the road. Riders, team staff, logistics workers, journalists, TV operators, the whole circus really, they'll be very, very happy with this one today. And over the course of 3 weeks, again, it's not something you particularly notice perhaps when you're sitting in the armchair at home watching it on the television, but it can take their toll on a lot of these guys. An extra half an hour, an hour earlier onto the mass odds table, it makes a huge difference to the night, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're quite right. Accumulatively, over the 3 weeks, the reduction in transfer distances and times can have a massive effect. And of course, these transfers, as you correctly pointed out, Rob, you know, it affects the whole team. It's not just the riders, it's the staff as well, and it makes it far easier. I think what the Giro have done is perhaps looked at last year. They had a fantastic start in Northern Ireland, as we know, but then they had to have an extra rest day and then move all the materials, infrastructure all the way across Europe. And for some of the smaller teams with less vehicles, it's a massive ask and very, very demanding. But yeah, it's good to see. I mean, we're looking at national tours. There's always going to be transfers, but if they can be reduced somehow, it's a definite boon to everybody.
78 kilometres to go. Maglia Rosa group around 1 minute and 25 behind our 4 main breakers, the 20 in the middle. Marcus Berghardt trying to close the gap to the 4 riders at the front of the race. This is the group of 21 riders that's in the middle. A few people on Twitter, Matt, asking us exactly who is here. A few questions about Sylvain Chavanel, Tom Bonen and the like. We know that they're there, and of course we'd love you to keep interacting with us. Hashtag Home of Cycling for all your comments, tweets, and even questions to the man alongside me, Matt Stevens, as well. Matt, just recap who's in this group first for you.
Well, sit yourself down, get comfy, because it's quite a long list. We've got 25.
Like bingo, isn't it?
25
riders. Out.
I think I've started about 3 times and only got to about 7 riders in before the action's kicked off. But here we go. We have Axel Domon of ๊dʒiːro. We have Gianfranco Zizioli of Androni Siremek. We also have one rider from Astana, and that's David Malacarne. And then we have 2 riders from Bardiani CSF. We have Luca Chiorico and we have Edoardo Zardini, who we've seen on the attack already. Then we have 3 riders from BMC, a few of which you just saw at the front. We're Philippe Gilbert, Marcus Berghardt and Sylvain Dillier. 2 from CCC Sprandi Polkowidze, and that's Maciek Petersky and Branislav Samelau. And then Ethics Quickstep have Tom Bonen in the mix. FDJ have 1 rider there in the form of Cedric Pinot, and then Lampre Marida have 2 riders, Diego Ulissi and Manuel Mori. Lotto Soudal have birthday boy Adam Hansen, and Movistar have 2 in the form of Ruben Fernandez and Jesus Herrada. And we have 2 riders from Orica Green Edge, Simon Clark, the Aussie, and we have Esteban Chavez there wearing the white jersey, although the leader of that classification is in fact Michael Matthews, so he's holding that for him at the present time. Southeast have 1 rider in the form of Francesco Gavazzi, Cannondale Garmin, have the Italian David Villela, and then Chad Haga represents Team Giant Alpecin. Katusha have Pavel Konechkov. Team Sky have Salvatore Puccio, and the final rider to round out the 25 leaders in front is Manuele Boaro of Tinkoff Saxo. Breathe out.
We've had the intermediate sprint going behind, just waiting for the full results. 75 kilometres remain in the meantime. Left Rapallo this morning, and it's quite a poignant visit now, and a sober visit every time we come on the Giro d'Italia. 4 years ago at the weekend, and it was the stage into Rapallo where we very, very sadly and tragically lost Walter Wayland. He died trying to descend the Passo del Bocco. Angel Vicioso was the man who won the stage on the day. Awful for him as well to cross the line thinking he's won, celebrating and not realising what had happened behind.
Yeah,
it was a sober and pretty horrible day to be there.
Yeah, tragic day. As I say, he will be. He's fondly remembered, and again, hashtag WW108. His number was number 108. A number I actually rode in the Giro back in 2000. The number now not part of the race anymore. They've removed that number from the dossards in respect and in memory of Walter Waylands.
Into ʻdʒiːro, city of UFOs apparently. I've not heard that one before.
Where'd you get that fact from? Well, there we go. Right in front of me.
1970s.
I'll look at my monitor.
No camera phones around in those days. Maciej Paterski, this group at the front coming all back together again, and the four men not getting enough of an advantage. It's come back together largely due to the work of the man on the left-hand side for those extra little bits of points on the intermediate sprints. Philippe Gilbert's in this group. We've seen Sylvain Dillier, BMC, very, very strongly represented. Markus Burkhardt is a German classics rider, very, very strong ruler. We've seen on the front of many a group throughout the last few years. He lives just over the border in Switzerland.
He took out Gent Wevelgem a few years back as well, didn't so? A very, very classy ruler, or as the Italians call him, passista.
Fernandez behind him. Chavez is the man in the white jersey, the Colombian climber. White jersey for the best young rider. He's actually second in that classification at the moment. It's his teammate Michael Matthews bossing that, but given the fact that he is bossing the race overall, he's wearing the pink leader's jersey. And he's going to be one of the strongest men, of course, on this Barba Gelata, the frozen beard climb.
Couldn't make it up, could you? What a title.
And Mikel Nieve as well in this group, so that's a very, very interesting one for Sky.
Another rider coming across. We didn't have his number originally, but have two riders in the mix to add to Salvatore Puccio, who's also there. Great picture here, with a bunch rounding this corner.
Tinkoff Saxo on the front, doing a lot of rising, surprising a few people. Let's hear from Mick Rogers, who rides in Alberto Contador's team.
Mick, you won a year ago in Savona. Not quite the same today, but what's the plan?
Very nervous stage today, very windy, thin roads, up and down the whole day. Not really expecting the big guys to make a move, but certainly maybe those guys that lost a little bit of time yesterday will try to come back into the general standings. I'm sure a few surprises will come out near the end as well.
Lots of surprises possible then. Savona just down the road from here where Mick Rogers won last year. It was his first Grand Tour stage win, and it was to be his first of 3 in a whole season. He went on to win here on Monte Zoncolan alongside a man who was in the early break today, Francesco Buongiorno. The drinks truck's here.
There we go, we saw Adam Hansen there, taking a bottle. Looks very, very warm. We've seen a few of the riders here. Now you were talking about you know, the aerodynamics of the new jerseys. They're very, very fitted indeed, but then so many riders unzip their tops. But what I've found, I've got a top just like this, very, very fitted. Although they're remarkably aerodynamic, quite weirdly, and although you see some of them are vented, some have like a mesh finish to them to help breathe. Ironically, they're actually a little bit more, you feel a bit more, you warm up easier. You tend to overheat because they cling to you. Lots of riders also have an under jersey underneath. So I find they're not quite as cool as the old style looser jersey. Perhaps that's just me, but that's why I think, because although it's warm, it's certainly not blazing hot. But always interesting to see how many riders unzip their tops completely.
Yeah, 27 degrees Celsius today, so what's that as well? Into the 80s, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hot, but again,
Showing my age there.
You know, yeah, it is. It's in the 80s. We can just see. Here we go. Jules Jensen putting in some real hard work. We're talking in the break, weren't we? You know, about the fact that Tinkoff had taken this up. You know, we think for 2 reasons: look after Alberto Contador, set their mark on the race, but we've still essentially got 3 weeks to go. How long can they keep that up? That'll be extremely interesting to watch.
ʻdʒiːro says hello to the Giro. Good job we're out of season. Time to get all those bales of hay off the football pitch. Looks like it's AstroTurf as well. Only get those annoying little stones you get in your boots after you've been playing. But lots of hay as well. Chris Jensen, schooled in Ireland, of Danish nationality. Now rides for the nation of his heritage rather than the nation of his upbringing. Number 13 there is Marco Bandiera in the white and blue. Couple of riders just feeling the heat at the back already, and there's still 72 kilometres to go. Number 184 there is Moreno Hofland, the sprinter yesterday, and it was really good to see Moreno Hofland with a lovely bit of sportsmanship yesterday. Elia Viviani, pardon me, took the win. Hofland, nice little tweet, the legs felt good, but one guy was faster. Congratulations. Moreno Hofland, second in the sprint yesterday. If we look at Alessandro Petacchi there as well. Looking at the pink jersey of Michael Matthews, looking to get the sprint right. Got it wrong yesterday, ever so slightly, but so did many teams. The only man to get it perfectly right was Elia Viviani. First Grand Tour stage win after so many times that he tried. He'd been second in the Giro d'Italia on a couple of occasions, 2013 stage 1 and stage 6. Stage 1 he was so disappointed that day because Mark Cavendish took the pink jersey and he thought he could have had it. Didn't feel great that day in Naples, I think it was, down in Napoli. He's in the pink jersey now and, well, he's going to end up wearing the pink jersey more times than Mark Cavendish if he's not curbing. Michael Matthews, protected well by his team from Oregon Green Edge.
Certainly, yeah, riding very, very well. Sat there looking pretty comfortable, to be honest with you. At the moment, it's the fluoro yellow still of Tinkoff Saxo, setting the tempo at the front. Team Sky just sat behind.
We're talking the sprint from yesterday, as it looks as though our kilometres to go bug has got stuck a little. Seem to be on 75 k's to go for a long, long time. We're going up again now. We're somewhere a little further less than that. I think somebody's noticed as well, finally.
We're definitely nearer the finish than we were a few kilometres ago. Anyway,
I hope so, yeah, we're going the wrong way. But yesterday, Elia Viviani, first Grand Tour stage win for him. He'd been second on a couple of occasions. Thinking back to the chance he had to wear the pink jersey in 2013 in Naples, in Napoli. Mark Cavendish wore it on the day then. Second on stage 6 of the 2013 Giro as well. Again, riding in a team that didn't have the greatest lead-out train for him, which was Liquigas back then. Turned into Cannondale for the last year or so. Now he's with Sky, and if you think about it, listening to our interview early on with Dave Brailsford and saying that he knew of Elia Viviani for a long, long time, following him on the track. Elia Viviani also in the press today talking about the fact that he lives less than an hour from the only covered velodrome in the whole of Italy. He's grown up on the track, he still rides on the track. Juan Antonio Fletcher on our Giro Extra programme at the start of the day also talking about the skills that you learn and the technical ability that can be gained from riding on the track, and I think that probably had a lot to do with his win yesterday, didn't it?
Definitely. If you I've no doubt you'll be able to see the replays as much as you want online if you wanted to, but and there's some interesting images, some still images that Gazzetta have put in, actually, like a little montage of images just showing how much pace Viviani had in the last 100 metres. First off, Dave Brailsford was correct. I mean, they didn't have a lot of riders at Viviani's disposal, but they looked after him up until around 1,500 metres to go, and then essentially he freestyled it all the way, and he's perfectly comfortable of doing that due to the skills he's picked up on the track. But then it was just the amazing amount of torque he managed to generate in the last 50 metres to go around Moreno Hofland. He almost had 2 kicks, and the significant thing for me was the amount of distance once he kicked for the second time that he put between himself, Greipel and Michael Matthews was quite astonishing. And bearing in mind as well, he's only 26 years of age, so the best, I think, is yet to come from Elia Viviani. He
said he still wants to ride on the track as well. He was very, very close in the Omnium at the World Championships this year. He wants that World Champions jersey again. I think he had a silver and a bronze from this year's World Championships. He's done excellently well in the last few European track championships as well. Does the fact that he doesn't need too much assistance, we saw this when Mark Cavendish was at Team Sky, he didn't really get any help at all, apart from on the final day on the Champs-Élysées, back with Brad Wiggins when he won the yellow jersey.
Yeah, Bernie a bit, but essentially that was it, wasn't it?
Does he now become the perfect sprinter for Team Sky because he doesn't need that and he can contribute in the hills as well?
Well, what it's done, it's given the team, it's the first Grand Tour win for Sky. They didn't, well, not totally, but they didn't have a Grand Tour stage win in any race last year. And what it's done, it's given the team a real shot, a real shot of morale. It's great for the team. The focus is about Richie Porte, but now they've got a win in their belt. But they can now take Viviani possibly to the Tours, knowing that he can pretty much do his own thing, running parallel with the main objective, which is the overall classification. And that's a good thing to have in your back pocket. And I must admit, there were a few raised eyebrows when Viviani came across to Sky. It's like, because he's not the best sprinter, but you know, he's maybe not the best sprinter then, but he could be the best sprinter going forward. And I think he's got a good environment to be nurtured, to get stronger, and to improve, get better.
Lots of people in the sprint looking to improve off yesterday. Andre Greipel was one who got it quite horribly wrong, and I'm sure he'd be the first to admit that. He's one of the most honest, and they call him the gentleman sprinter in the Italian press, Andre Greipel, and from the Rostock, the Gorilla. Just seen a big Sampdoria Football Club fan there with his huge flag. We saw Genoa, still called the Genoa Cricket and Football Club, the first ever football club in the whole of Italy. Now, talking sprinters, talking yesterday, let's go and talk to Heinrich Hausler, the Australian champion.
Heinrich, how are you, and what is today's stage going to bring?
Well, I think for me and a lot of the other guys, it's going to be a hard stage. Just the start of the tour, you know, having a crash like that, losing skin, it just puts your body under pressure, and you're just trying to recover. So see how it goes. If I can try and make it over the climb, I'll give everything. But if I've already noticed at the start, you know, stiff, not going good, then it's still 19 stages to go. But it's going to be a definitely hard stage. It's going to be hard to control, especially if a big group goes. It's going to make it for a real hard, fast stage.
It's a battle, isn't it, for anybody who crashes so early in the Giro. Not just to get back into the fight, as we see the Lake of Brugneto, huge dam there, but imagine releasing all the water for that dam. Early stage of the Giro, you'll be washed over by it, and you will feel a little washed over when you get back on your bike the day after, won't you?
It's tough. It's something that I have ridden one Grand Tour. That was the Giro, many years ago now, when things were black and white. But no, it does. It affects you dramatically. I mean, even though we know that Hausler has just had, you know, quite a lot of skin taken off, and also Dea Quintana, we saw some pictures of him, absolutely shredded his jersey right through the under jersey, shredded too. Took a lot of skin off his side and his shoulder and his hip. But it makes it very difficult to sleep. You stick, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, there has been quite a lot of developments in relation to the products and bandages that you can apply, second skin, etc. But it does, the body, as well as trying to recuperate from the tremendous effort of getting through a Grand Tour, it's then got to heal itself as well as healing the muscles, it's healing broken skin. Then thrown into the mix is the fact you can't sleep properly. It's very, very difficult indeed. Not a great start for Heinrich Hausler, but he's a tough guy. I mean, he's a very, very tough rider. I'm sure he'll be fine. But because it's 3 weeks long, bizarrely, you can actually get a little bit better. You can recover slowly, especially if it's just a flesh wound. But I'm sure we'll see him back in the action in a few days' time.
Great reaction on Twitter to the Australian champion on your screens. I know a lot of you.
A lot of fans of Heinrich out there, aren't there?
They are, but a lot of you are staying up very, very late into the night to watch us. So thanks for being with us on the Home of Cycling, and of course keep writing into us #Home of Cycling. We'd love to hear from you. This is Luca Chirico at the front. 3 minutes and 52 down on the general classification. In fact, Bardiani have lost quite a few of their riders, losing quite a bit of time. There's only Buongiorno, Battaglin and Ruffoni who are at 37 seconds. Everybody else at least a minute and 46 down, including the likes of Zardini and Pirazzi. They'll be fighting for stage wins though. Again, we never really expected them to be there after the 3 weeks, fighting for the general classification. Once more, it's time to climb, and just a sense that the gap is reducing a little now, because a few cars being pulled up the front, and we've still got this fantastic rhythm being put on by Chris Jensen and Matteo Tosato for Tinkoff Saxo. 72 kilometers remain on stage 3.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
A very warm welcome back, but it's not great news at the minute for Team Movistar. Benjatin Chausti with a necessary change of wheel there. This is young Luca Chirico doing a lot of work for his teammate Zardini at the minute, trying to get him to the foot of the Barba Gelata in the right position, and in the meantime keep the gap to the peloton behind. What's happening in the peloton at the minute? We've seen sprinter after sprinter after sprinter, most of Michael Matthews' rivals struggling, dropping off the back. If it does come back together, it could be a procession for Michael Matthews today.
Yeah, I mean, you forget that Michael Matthews isn't in fact the purest of sprinters. He's more of an all-rounder. They're kind of, as long as it's not mountainous, if it's hilly, you know, Michael Matthews will be there. He's already taken the status in Paris-Nice and Tour de Pays Vasco as well. He's had a solid year, but yeah, he's just sitting there, looks remarkably comfortable as well. But yeah, it's increasingly, the odds are looking good should it come back together for him.
Quite a few sprinters close to being dropped out the back here. Mezgec, Greipel, we've seen Belletti in trouble, Petacchi close to the back as well. For the benefit of our viewers on British Eurosport who've just rejoined us, we've just been saying Michael Matthews at the minute, without rival towards the front of the peloton. It's great work that's being done by Tinkoff Saxo, and Orica Greenedge will be very, very happy with this. Tinkoff Saxo, though, reducing the gap to 52 seconds behind the 25-man group that is at the front. That 25-man group being led at the minute by Bardiani, with the very young rider Luca Chirico doing some really good work for Edoardo Zardini. And we said this was the roof of Liguria. There's proof, the telescope up on the hill. Juul Jensen still. Now Sky, third wheel here. I think before it all gets interesting, this is one of the more left field and random conversations we've ever had on Eurosport Cycling, but I'm going to say 3 words, and Matt Stevens is going to tell you the rest. Richie Porte's caravan.
Yes, indeed, Richie Porte's caravan. I mean, this I found out about this yesterday, just having a read up, and it's another one of Team Sky's marginal gains, or they're trying it anyway to see how it works. Normally, teams stay in various hotels. Sometimes you get big hotels. Lots of teams stay. Generally, in Italy, teams stay in the smaller hotels, and riders will room up. They'll double up. Got teams of 9. Generally, one rider will be on his own. Then the other 4 sets of 2 will room up. Often, teams will mix riders around. Other times, you'll get a chosen teammate that you prefer to room with. But interestingly, Team Sky have opted to bring along this rather large mobile home. They've actually hired it for the duration of the Giro d'Italia, and it's for Richie Porte basically to sleep in. And the thinking behind it is to try and get him in a routine, because there is, I mean, I've experienced it when you move from hotel to hotel, but also bear in mind that Sky bring their own pillows and mattresses for the rider, so there's a degree of consistency there in relation to comfort. But in relation to your surroundings, what they're trying to test and sample to see if it helps with recoveries and sleep patterns, etc., is a consistency in relation to the sleep environment. So there's a familiarity for young Richie Porte. Now, he's going to still eat with the riders, so the tradition there will remain. That would be rather weird to essentially ostracise himself from the team.
You don't want to destroy the team spirit, do you?
No, because I mean, I think there'll be a few people looking at this and thinking, "No, you can't do this. It's not traditional. It's not right." But it's legal. There's generally nothing wrong with it. And if you look at what Team Sky have done in the past, they've been the trailblazers. They've been pushing the vanguard of what we understand. They've deconstructed the sport, rebuilt it again, and it looks different than it does 5 years ago. And this is just another very interesting example of their willingness to try new things. It's odd, it's a bit left field, but let's see what happens. They're certainly going to review it. It might be something they completely bin, but it could be something that they move forward with. But again, it's not every team can do that. They don't have the budget or the resources to do so.
Well, there's talk of maybe Chris Froome at the Tour de France maybe adopting it if it's seen to be a success here. I mean, Cycling Weekly, the British publication, went on with the carry-on camping headline yesterday. I'm sure that would be how it's referred to if it doesn't work for Richie Porte here, but it's another sort of those things for Team Sky. They'll end up being ridiculed for a bizarre idea if it doesn't work, but you know, Dave Brailsford will be a genius again if it works. It's that sort of yes or no. It is pretty black and white, and there isn't too much grey there. It produced a lovely little reaction in the newspaper in Italy this morning. Now, Mauro Vegni is the man we mentioned early on today. He's the director of the Giro d'Italia now. He's the man who's taken over after we had Acquarone a few years ago. We had Angelo Zomignan, and we mentioned the transfers. Zomignan was actually forced out because of the long transfers. The television were actually unhappy with him, more than the riders, because of the 7-8 hour shifts that they had to put in. They were getting to the hotels at 2-3 a.m. in the morning. But Mauro Vegni, he's become a bit of a comedy character within cycling in Italy as well. He's got a thick southwestern accent, a real thick southern accent. Doesn't pronounce his words fully. The equivalent of my northern accent, if you like, in English. There's even a Twitter parody of him as well. But yesterday, he was a little offended, I think, by Sky and Richie's choice to go in the caravan. He says, well, We've got very nice hotels in Italy, actually. I'm very sorry that Richie has to sleep in a caravan. I'm not sure he fully understood the logic, but it was a nice little innocent quote in the paper that I think would have had a few people chuckling over the cornflakes.
Yeah, well, on first glance, when you first read it, that was almost, as somebody who I embrace the new, but I'm also quite fond of the way things were, and I think the past is important. You can draw from that as well as looking forward. And I thought,
better in my day.
Yeah, and I thought that's a bit weird. But then I read through and looked at the logic and the reasoning behind this project, for want of a better word. And they are actually still going to there's still going to be a room for Richie there because of the odd number of riders. Generally, he prefers actually, and that's quite important. I didn't mention that before. He's the rider that likes his own space and prefers to room alone. So they'll keep the room because when you look at just again the topography and the geographics of the Giro and the small mountain villages and towns that they stay in, sometimes the vehicles are parked 500 metres, 700 metres away from the hotel, so there may be some times where it's just not practical in relation to parking and space to actually have Richie Porte too far away from the team hotel, isolated and perhaps vulnerable to possible security issues. You just don't know. But generally in the bigger towns, it's not a problem. But I would imagine that it's quite a project. I don't know how many people are involved in driving it, setting it up and stuff, but it's certainly a very interesting point of discussion, and we'll see how it unfolds over the next 3 weeks.
We've been riding for 2 hours on stage 3 of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. Marcus Burkhardt seems to be taking on more bidons and more food than I've ever seen him eat before. He's a big guy. Bit of a gear problem there and a chain problem for Luca Chirico, helped out by his teammate. Average race speed so far, 34.6 kilometers per hour. Most of the stage economy so far has been uphill though, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's still a pretty good tempo. I mean, that's it's still.
This is the gear problem a minute.
Yeah, it looks like it just slipped his gear. I do think Bardiani are actually still. They're riding on mechanical gears, and not that really makes much of a difference. But sometimes changing from the big ring to the small ring, it can get jammed. So a little bit of a helping hand there for the youngster. Only 22 years of age, that rider, but riding very well. Looking at Zardini, took a stage win in the Tour of Britain last year, as well as a stage in the Giro del Trentino.
Murilo Fischer in the white and blue of Frances Desjeux at the back, former Brazilian champion, and he was a sprinter at the start of his career. Now very much a road captain and domestique. Andre Greipel desperately trying to hang on towards the end. Didn't crash yesterday, just launched his sprint too easy, as we see another Sampdoria fan with a flag on his balcony. Let's go back to the start and have a chat.
That you've put a cross next to in the road book.
Yeah, it suits definitely a stage that suits my characteristics. It's quite a hard stage with a flat finish. So yeah, we'll be there trying to go for the stage win today.
Cross next to the stage for Michael Matthews. At the minute, it's going to plan because his team, as you mentioned already, have not had to do one little bit of work.
It's not often you'll see that. We've talked about it a lot already. We're only, not even halfway through the third stage of the Giro. The team in the Maglia Rosa normally will have to ride at the front, but at the moment it's been left to Tinkoff Saxo. But bear in mind also, Tinkoff Saxo do have a guy on the break, but Orica Greenwich have two riders. Should that break stay away? Now it's come down to around 47 seconds. They don't actually need to ride on the front, and who else would ride at the front? So with Alberto Contador being the out-and-out favourite, the other riders are saying, hey Tinkoff, you just take it up.
Three leaders yesterday lost quite a bit of time from that crash. Domenico Pozzovivo, Sylvester Schmidt and Przemysław Niemiec. 1 minute and 9 they lost after already each of them probably having pretty poor team time trials on the first day. Most of them find themselves 2 minutes back already, and after just 2 stages it's a bit of a nightmare for the likes of Pozzovivo and Niemiec in particular. We knew that Sylvester Schmidt hadn't been going particularly well in the build-up to this race, and of course the advancing years not helping, but Przemysław Niemiec and Domenico Pozzovivo perturbed a little by the crash yesterday.
Yeah, you could see the frustration on the face, the understandable frustration on the face of the little Italian as he came through with a lap to go. His teammates gradually dropping back once they got the radio communication that he'd been caught behind that crash. So it's a fair bit of time for him to make up. But on the other hand, for for people who aren't involved in the team, just the fans of the sport, the commentators, it means that ʻdʒiːro, if he wanted to take back time, has to attack. Perhaps not today. I don't think we'll see him necessarily attack today, but to Abbatone, for example, on stage 5, already got the first mountaintop finish of the Giro. And bear in mind, again, he's not exactly a time trial specialist. We're going to have to see him make up time on the hills, which only makes for exciting racing.
Nemec has already said that he likes the look of Abbatone. He trains there a lot. It's one of his own training mountains, so you'd expect him to try and do that himself on that day. Anyway, that's stage 5 in a couple of days' time. Tomorrow we head from Chiavari to La Spezia. And in the meantime, plenty to admire on the way to Sestri Levante.
Wow, just look at that. That's absolutely astonishing, isn't it?
Talking of the crash yesterday, 72 kilometres into the race, this is where we are before we get to the crash and the cause of it, because it was much debate yesterday. We're very, very close to the bottom of that second category climb to Barba Gelata, which is the big obstacle of the day. So crash 24 hours ago at the end, the big one. I know there were several crashes, but the big one that took the likes of Atapuma down, Fernandez, Herrada, Pozzovivo, Schmidt and Nemec, who we've just talked about as well. The talk is, the first man to suggest this was Eugenio Alafacci, as we've seen Alan Hansen just take it up at the front. But Eugenio Alafacci of Trek Factory Racing saying yesterday that the crash was caused by an idiot on what we call in London a Boris bike, or a fixed wheel bike, fixed gear bike, pardon me, or just a town bike. Came out there, we've seen images of it on the internet, and it looks pretty horrific.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite incredible. We didn't manage to see that from our coverage. Apparently there is a photo, a grainy photo somewhere on the internet that shows that this actually happened. That's been confirmed by a couple of riders from Trek Factory Racing. But if that is the case, it's utterly incredible. It was the most significant crash. We knew it was nervous, but to have somebody on a push bike, to ride into the field is something that I think the race organisers might need to look at. But bear in mind, it's very difficult to control, and you wouldn't expect somebody to be as idiotic as to try and attempt to do something as foolish as that.
Luca Chirico, work is done. It's tweet time. Nathan Haas talking on Twitter earlier on, and just confirming what we were saying very early on about the length of the stage. You don't have to have mega long and mega mountain stage. If you've got a short, intense stage, it equals fireworks. Go Giro, he says, as we've seen plenty of problems already for Giant Alpecin. We saw Simon Geschke dropping back to the car, but Luca Mezget's already struggling. No big sprint for them, it would seem.
No, and the speed with which he got detached then, it kind of indicates to me that what we call that is putting the reversing lights on. I say that in respect, he's a fantastic rider, but and there's Tom Bonen as well. He was in the original breakaway. It's obviously been dropped from the break, gone straight back through the bunch. But again, when you look at the profile of today's stage, you wouldn't necessarily think of Tom Bonen as being one of the riders. All Mizget's, of course, to being up in the mix, and not really surprising. But that's what happens. You can ride at this tempo, but then it becomes unsustainable. You get yourself into the red, and then it's essentially like putting the brake lights on. You almost stop, recover, get into some sort of a group, and generally it's what's known as the autobus, and then you'll ride tempo on the climbs with people of a similar ability, generally the sprinters, the bigger riders, and the riders with no real ambitions on the overall, who will perhaps look to other stages to focus on stage wins or working for their teammates. But no real surprise to see those two riders out the back.
Sam Bewley on the left-hand side, Kiwi track star, rides for Orica Green Edge, victorious on the first day in the team time trial. This is the state of things in the break. Ulisi up there with the teammate. Now problems for Beñat and Chalsti. Second time he's had to have a little mechanical assistance. We saw him changing a wheel. This time it's a straight bike change.
Yeah, he should be back on. He's lying pretty comfortably overall, only at 21 seconds, and the team captain for Movistar in the Giro d'Italia this year. But again, that was a pretty rapid change, to be fair. Nice and swift, but not the sort of issues he wants out on the road, because there is quite as we say, a pretty high tempo being set. And although these riders make it look so easy moving back through the race convoy, it does actually take it out of you, because you stop and straight away you're at a disadvantage. You've then got to ride faster than the tempo in front, so it's a handicap at the end. So it's about not panicking. He's a rider of vast experience. He's the team captain, so he'll just drift back up through the peloton, no doubt passing many of the riders in distress who can't keep up, and then he'll move himself back into the peloton. But again, it's not what you need, especially on the climbs.
Luisi being protected well here. Lambert have had a bit of a nightmare start to this Giro d'Italia. They haven't really done what they've needed to do in terms of looking after their stars so far. Nemet's having a nightmare yesterday. 49 seconds is all this group has. And Chalsti further back. Ruben Fernandez is in this group, of course, for Movistar.
You see Simon Clark there as well. Great all-rounder. Simon Clark, a remarkable climber, had a great ride a couple of years back in the World Road Championships. He can finish really well as well from the small group, the stage that no doubt suit him should this break stay away. But at the moment, think of Saxo.
Really, Paulinho taking it up at the front. Nick Rogers is behind him.
Yeah, Paulinho, great climber. It's funny when you look back at his career, silver medalist in the Olympic Road Championships. That was back in 2000, I think, or it was a long, long time ago. 2004. I'll have to check on his results, but a real tough rider.
Need a drink. It's a long way back to the group. Thank you very much. More than a drink.
That's
hope
more
the
than a drink.
commissars aren't looking.
I think that was just on the border. I think you can hold, is it 200 metres? Well, it's 200 metres you can sit behind a car for, but it happens. It's the way it is. It's one of these short downhill sections. This climb looming in front. It won't be too far before they are on the foot slopes of the most significant climb of the day.
And we have narrow roads around here as well. They're not just twisty, they're not just steep, both up and down. They're very, very narrow, as you can see. And once the peloton, or what's left of it, by the time we get to the final descent, we're really not sure what's going to happen on the Barba Gelata climb. And we're going to see a real interesting fight for space. In fact, Juan Antonio Fletcher seemed to suggest in our Giro Extra program at the start that the breakaway could actually gain time on the descent.
Yeah, you hear that. We talk about that a lot, about the advantage being with the breakaway, especially on technical descents. And well, especially it's because you can pick your own line, you're not dictated to. But the other thing about being in front, it's good on one hand, but as you're the first rider around the bend, apart from the motorbike in front, you're the rider that's picking the line. And if you don't know the descent, it's generally advantageous, but there's also, it has its own disadvantages. The good thing about being behind a rider, and generally you'll drop back on a few lengths to give yourself some space in relation to braking distances, etc., is that the line is taken for you. But if you're in the break and you're the first rider in the breakaway, the line that you take through the bend dictates generally where the other riders will go. So it's quite interesting. But no, I think he's quite right. It's the best place to be, given these technical descents, is definitely out front. But again, holding steady. Think of Saxo. Don't want to let this move get too far away.
Jules Jensen back there. Inside 60 kilometers today now. Heading from Rapallo inland and back towards Estri Levanti. One intermediate sprint still to go at Montebruno. And then, of course, that second category climb, the first second category climb this Giro d'Italia. It's not too far away until we have the first category climb of the Giro. Comes up on day 5, of course. Tomorrow, up and down again as we go into La Spezia. Final descent is even closer to the line tomorrow, so it could be, although the hill's aren't quite as high and quite as steep, it could still be very interesting. If we look at Brugneto again, we've basically made a little tour around the lake here.
Yeah, I think we've got this the next hotspot coming up. Just to explain the situation in relation to the hotspot sprints and the Maglia Rossa, the red jersey. So today's stage is classified as D. There's A, B, C, D and E classified stages. So today's stage, given that its relative difficulty, has been assigned by RCS, the organisers of the Giro d'Italia, as a D category. So in relation to the points classification, which is currently being led by Elia Viviani of Team Sky, he's got the red jersey on, the Maglia Rosso. For the first 10 across the line, there's points 15 down to 1 for 10th place. Now, in relation to the hotspot sprints, there are points assigned to the Maglia Rossa in the 2 hotspot sprints today, and it's just for the first 3. So points 8, 4 and 1 will be given towards the Maglia Rossa competition today. And then there's a separate classification for the overall hotspots classification at the end of the Giro. There's no jersey given for that. So every day across each hotspot, 10, 6, 3, 2 and 1 for the first 5, in addition to the time bonuses of 3, 2 and 1. So hopefully we've put that one to bed, and that's that one clarified for you at home.
Sure?
I think so.
Final answer.
Answers on a postcard, but that's I spent a bit of time poring over the rule book, and that's the situation.
Just under 60 kilometres to go. We've just gone through Rodanina, smallest village in the whole of Liguria, which is the region that's stuck to the coast where we started this Giro d'Italia. It encompasses San Remo right to the west, very close to the French border. Not too far away from Piemonte, or Piedmont, as it is in English. Region which has Turin as its capital, and where we will end the Giro d'Italia by leaving Turin and going over to Lombardy and Milan.
Yeah, it's a lovely area. I've ridden the Giro del Piemonte myself. That's a tough race. Gorgeous countryside, but to be honest, there's not that many places in Italy which aren't gorgeous, to be honest with you. But here's an illustration of this technical descent. Some new tarmac laid on the right-hand side there. Well, this whole section looks like it's been relaid. But when you're riding on, when you go from freshly laid tarmac to old roads, it's different with the bike. You get different adherence with the tyres. It can be a little bit sketchy given how tight some of these corners are as well.
Population of Rodanina, I was just talking about it, just 68 people. They're all off to make a cup of tea, so are we. Back in just a moment's time. "55 kilometres from the finish. Bit of a descent before we hit the Barba Gelata climb. Climb a second category climb here on the Giro d'Italia stage 3, and then a long descent before some flat in the final 20 kilometres. 44 seconds, it's still not quite clear what's going to happen today.
You wonder if Tinkoff really want to actually bring this back. I would suggest, it's difficult. If this break were to stay away, it would depend on the running what happened, but the best placed riders in the breakaway, Esteban Chavez is wearing the white jersey. They sat about 3rd or 4th wheel, and his teammate Simon Clark, they are actually sat on the same time as the rider in the Maglia Rossa. That's their teammate, Michael Matthews, so they're the best place. But I would think it would be more in their interest just to hold off and keep it at around a minute rather than bring it all back together, which essentially opens the race back up again. So I think we'll see it hover around 50 seconds to a minute for the next few kilometres.
Manuele Mori of Lampre on the front, heading to Sestri Levante today. Sestri Levante hosted some Giro d'Italia stage finishes in the past. Victory in 1960 went to Gastone Nencini. Graziano Battistini, who was from the area, won in 1962. More recently, names that our younger viewers will remember, Joan Orach, a man from the Balearic Islands, who only just recently retired. He was racing for Katusha at the end of his career. He won in 2006, and the last time we were here was 2012. Lars Yttingbæk of Denmark winning on that day. We saw images alongside Juan Antonio Fletcher, who said he was 10th on that stage when racing for Sky. Last time we had a stage finish here, and it's a place we visit often. It is a beautiful part of the world, as we've been saying the last few days, part of very close to the region of the Cinque Terre, which if you've been on a tourist trip to Liguria, you will have certainly had offered to you. It's well worth doing. You can walk through most of them. 5 very small towns connected together. You can get the train to most of them as well. Absolutely stunning places. Feels like you're in a completely different part of the world. Breakaway on the left-hand side. Tinkoff Saxo on the right. It's peloton on the right-hand side. Hovering at around 45, 55 seconds. Just under a minute. We're on a bit of a descent now, and then when they hit Barba Gelata, Matt, you already said that the lower slopes of this climb is what's really going to affect people. 12%.
Yeah, it's kicks up very early. It's 10% 10%, and then we have this, it's only a short section of 12% before then averaging out again, but that's a significant climb. And coming as it is, or in what we're only describe as a really, really punchy, difficult stage. And we're just coming up to one of the hot spots as well now, so we're just seeing only 1 kilometre to go. That's why we're seeing BMC move to the front now.
Well, BMC, who won the last one with Philippe Gilbert, we finally got the results through after we'd missed it when we were away at the ad break. Gilbert, Clark and Dillier, 1, 2 and 3 of the last time. And you can see here that Dillier is doing some good work.
But look at Simon Clark significantly. I mean, BMC are a few seconds behind overall. So if Simon Clark were to nudge this, and Michael Matthew was to fail to score in the finish, he'd actually move himself into the Maglia Rossa. So this is an interesting opportunity, and of course, taking away seconds from other riders. So I definitely think we'll see Clarkie have a go here.
Orica Greenedge always said that it was their aim to keep the Maglia Rosa, the leader's pink jersey, for the few days. This is Philippe Gilbert there. He's seen it, the former world champion, into the final few hundred metres before the second intermediate sprint of the day. The man on his wheel in the white is Simon Clark. He will come second. Gilbert will take the points, but still good seconds for Clark, who has taken bonuses on both of the intermediate sprints. It is the same order as last time. Gilbert, Clark and Dillier, the 1, 2, 3. Makes it very, very interesting when we come to the end today.
Yeah, so Clark now actually has 4 seconds advantage over Michael Matthews on the general classification. And when you look at Simon Clark as a rider, even though he's in this breakaway, he's the kind of rider that will easily, I say easily, it won't be too much of a problem for him to get over this climb, even in the break and in the bunch. So I think we'll see him, barring any accidents, finish in the main field at the end today. So we could see another Australian in the pink jersey. So a good move there.
Jules Jensen at the front, Dozzato second wheel.
Of course, it's interesting. You know, we think Tinkoff Saxo are riding. There's no other teams that need to ride, given the composition of the leaders. And we're seeing Lampe Merida riding hard at the front. But what this does, it forces Tinkoff Saxo to ride tempo. That they just can't sit back. So they'll be instructed to make it hard, because this, you know, there's the 1 minute and 7 seconds. So yes, hovering around a minute, went down to 45, now gone back up. They'll obviously be in radio contact with Steven de Jong back in the team car, maybe instructing them to just hold it. They do certainly have the capabilities, although numerically superior as the breakaway, as we see Gilbert winning that. I wouldn't say at a canter, but certainly Simon Clark match him in terms of power at the finish there.
Gilbert had a nice little lead out there as well. It was well timed, well placed.
Even just glancing over his shoulder to make sure he's done enough, and managing to freewheel the last 15 metres across the line. Some more seconds in the pocket there.
Back climbing again, 50 kilometres to go. Diego Ulisi, who's been put into position very, very well by Emanuele Mori. Barba Gelata up to 1,000 metres. It's 5.7 kilometres long. It covers 460 metres of dislivello, as they'd call it in this part of the world, which is altitude metres. So 460 metres of climbing, and we've seen it's an average of 7%. Goes up to 12%. You can see Emanuele Mori doing quite a bit of the work, dropping off early on. Gianfranco Ziglioli of Androni Sidermec off the back as well. And this is what's happening at the back of the peloton. Elia Viviani in the red jersey, la maglia rossa. Very, very close to dropping off the back.
Yeah, I mean, he's already got a stage win. When you look at the parcours today, not a day for Viviani at all. So these days are about basically surviving and making sure you don't spend any unnecessary energy. There's no point in him battling to stay in the group and going into the red and taking a few days to recover. He'll have identified in the road book some stages that he can go for. So it's about getting in the autobus, making sure, of course, he still finishes in the time limit, but not going into the red unnecessarily. Although he is literally in the red in the Maglia Rossa, of course. But yeah, I mean, physiologically in the red.
It's a good point to point out that there can be some confusion for English speakers or non-Italian speakers. There's one little letters difference between the pink and the red jersey in Italian. To some of you it may sound similar. I'm trying to make the distinction. Maglia Rosa is the pink jersey, just one S, R-O-S-A, that's the word pink in Italian, and then Maglia Rossa, double S, is the red jersey. Pink for the leader here at the Giro d'Italia, for those of you who might be watching for the first time. And the points jersey is a red jersey, maglia rossa, on the shoulders, as we saw there, of Elia Viviani, the Italian sprinter. This is Edoardo Sardini, riding for Bardiani. He's been in the breakaway. He's 50 kilometers to go. And with this climb, Paterski is there with Ulissi.
Yeah, Adam Hansen looking pretty comfortable at the moment. You don't think of Adam Hansen as a climber, but when he needs to, he can climb really well. Extra motivated today. He's trying to set a record with the most consecutive Grand Tours ridden. So riding himself into the record books just by completing this Giro d'Italia, but on his birthday, clearly motivated to get into the move. And it shows how well he's going as well, because we saw how competitive the early part of the race was. Numerous riders attacking, the bunch fragmenting, lots of riders getting dropped, but finally the break is established. And Adam Hansen, I must admit, looking very comfortable indeed at the moment for Lotto Soudal in the red there.
Paterski, who is riding for CCC here, started his career riding for Liquigas in 2010. He stayed there for 4 seasons before he moved to CCC last season. Then he started training at home. He's had his family with him, managed to reset himself. He didn't really get a chance as a non-Italian rider riding at Liquigas to do his thing. But going back, it seems, was just what he needed. A couple of riders from the breakaway absorbed. Manuele Mori there, and Zilioli is there as well. Hernandez in the meantime towards the back, and this is Daira Quintana, who's bandaged up on one side, and it just shows the extent of those injuries and the amount of skin he lost yesterday.
Yeah, it's very difficult to ride as well when you're bandaged up that much. I mean, normally, he's an exceptional climber, maybe not quite of the caliber of his brother just yet. It looks like Pataki there. Had a fine finish yesterday, the oldest rider in the race, the veteran.
He did really, really well. He talked actually before the stage, and it's something that we didn't see. He gave a last-minute interview to one of the French television stations, actually, saying that, yeah, I really want to win today. I really, really want to do something. And in the end, ended up 4th. He wants to win tomorrow, but the way he's going, he hasn't won a Grand Tour stage since he won here in Parma. The Giro d'Italia stage, he only just beat Mark Cavendish on the day, and had the unenviable task of interviewing Mark Cavendish after that. He wasn't very happy because Cavendish had been disqualified on the way in. And he was in the pink jersey, so he had to turn up for the interviews. He was in a right old mood, but of course, he's always a good, fair guy, Mark Cavendish. Of course, naturally, as a winner, in a bad mood when he loses, but he gave a fair assessment afterwards. Always good value in front of the television camera. This is the group as it stands at the minute at the front, and it's whittled down to around 10 to 12 riders now. Kochetkov is still there, as is Manuele Boaro. He's the man in the fluorescent yellow right at the back on the foot of your screen. Still 2 riders from BMC, one of which, of course, is Philippe Gilbert. Esteban Chavez is there in the white jersey as well for Orica Green Edge. 2 riders from CCC, pardon me, Matt. Yeah,
no, sorry, it's Branislav Samolau who's on the front at the moment, with Maciej Paterski on his wheel.
Elia Favilli towards the back and struggling. He's alongside Mikhailov, who's the Bulgarian rider for CCC. Just in front of him, you have the number 33, who is Enrico Battaglin. He'll have been wanting to hold on today. The left-hand side, the breakaway. The right-hand side, you have the Maglia Rosa group, the pink jersey group, led still by the team that doesn't have the Maglia Rosa. Tinkoff Saxo doing a great job today.
Yeah, at the front, that's it, Ivan Rodney. Polino just sat behind him.
To notice from that, though, Matt, you look ahead further to the race. Alberto Contador said that he didn't want to carry the pink jersey from as early as the first week through the second week into the third week. He's racing as if they had it. Is he not going to tire his team out here? It's
a good point. We've discussed it just before we came on air, and even in the ad breaks, it's how long can they sustain this sort of riding. It certainly makes it easier for the other teams. And they're human, there's only so much they can sustain. But it's slightly different. It's keeping him out of trouble. They started off the race very strongly with the 2nd place in the team time trial, so clearly their spirits are buoyed. They've kept Alberto out of trouble, and there's a different sort of pressure. He doesn't have the jersey on his back, so the fact that when you have it on your back and you're a GC contender, then it's a completely different sort of pressure. So yeah, it's interesting that they're putting so much effort in, given how hard this Giro is going to be. But there's a few riders now that have been dropped. This bunch is significantly reduced. I think we thought before the start we may get a group of around 60, 70 riders coming into finish, should it all come back together. Of course, we've still got around 12 or 13 riders surviving from the original break of 25. A couple of fast finishes in there too. Philippe Gilbert still in the mix, climbing very, very well. But no, it's a good question, Rob, and the answer's unknown. I don't know where but he does have a very, very experienced team.
I can think of one thing from the group at the front. He's a young 25-year-old Colombian rider who's called Esteban Chavez, and over 3 weeks his form is unknown. He hasn't really ridden Grand Tours at this level before. Yeah, I think he rode the Vuelta at the end of last year. This is his first Giro d'Italia. He's a guy who in the future you expect to be a big contender, but of course they'd be kicking themselves if they gave him a big advantage today and he was still there in 3 weeks fighting in the mountains.
Well, you've seen how he can perform in the mountains. He took one of the hardest stages last year in the Tour of California
and the Tour de Suisse.
And the Tour de Suisse. So he is a very, very talented climber. But he, again, given his tender years, it's not quite the finished article yet. But it doesn't mean he can't win. Look at years back, Damiano Cunego for 24 won the Giro d'Italia relatively unexpectedly. Different times back then, but no, yeah, they don't want to give him too much of a lead. But as I say, they're holding steady at the moment, around 50 seconds. But lots of riders going south on this very, very difficult day.
The Belarusian Branislav Samilov riding the Giro for the 5th time, achieving his best ever finish at the first attempt in 2007. As another Belarusian, Vasil Kirienka, surprisingly off the back for Team Sky. He'll have been doing a lot of work towards the end of the stage yesterday. I know he was signalled out for praise by Elia Viviani. Attempt to try and get up there for Bardiani in the meantime.
Well, what a race Bardiani had last year, though. 3 stage wins. They're a pro-continental setup, but this is their tour, and they do shine. And to take 3 stages for 3 different riders last year, they're so motivated and determined. As we see at Perazzi as well. So yeah, they're a very, very talented team. They're not afraid of anybody, and the Italians absolutely love them.
Another Sky rider off the back, Sebastian Henao. Now that is a surprise. Sebastian Henao was saying he wanted to stay with Richie Porte all the way through the 3rd week in the mountains, and tactically for Sky, that's not a particularly good thing to see, is it? No,
and just looking at his facial expressions, I don't think he's doing that on purpose. He looks a bit distressed. He was rocking around. I mean, he's a very, very good climber, is Henao, and yeah, that's certainly not something that I'd expect. Well,
Sebastian Henao is a guy who we think that in a few years will be up as close to team leadership status in one of these big World Tour teams. It
could be. I mean, it's they say every Grand Tour, you can have a bad day. Some riders have several bad days, and it doesn't necessarily happen at the back end. It can just happen midway through or right at the beginning. Normally, given the size of the field there, that you'd think that Henao would survive on this climb. And bear in mind, it's only a 2nd category climb, only 5.7 kilometers in length. But there's a lot of riders really in some difficulties today.
Stefano Pirazzi, the man with the biggest fan club just north of Rome. 2010 he turned pro. He's been with the same team ever since. 1 professional victory, and that came on last year's Giro d'Italia. Finally got that big win. He's from just north of Rome, as we said, from the Lazio region. Stefano Pirazzi got his dream stage win last year. He's attacked just about on most stages with any sort of uphill road we've seen him ever racing.
I tell you what, that's a very, very good move. The gap was it was 47 seconds. He now bridged across, but look, the gap now from the leaders to the Maglia Rosa group is now only 18 seconds. So the rhythm that's been set by Ivan Rovny primarily, the young Russian on the Tinkoff Saxo squad, the only Russian actually in the Tinkoff team for the Giro d'Italia, is actually bringing this lead back at the moment.
Enrico Battaglin, back of the peloton, losing contact as well with another rider from Bardiani too. Lots of surprises here on this climb to Barba Gelata. A nervous look behind from Samilov. What does he have left to give for Petevsky in the end? 18 seconds, though, is nowhere near enough here at the minute.
It isn't enough. It does look like this might all come back together. And Perazzi, he did put in the effort, closed down the gap, but now Polino is on the front. And there's Mick Rogers, the first real time we've seen Mick Rogers at or near the front, and he's closely followed by the former double Giro d'Italia winner, Ivan Basso.
Perazzi, ciao for the day. This is what awaits the riders today. The main test at the Giro, thanks to @VeloViewer on Twitter. 5.7 kilometers at 8%, 12% is the maximum gradient. Well, officially, it's now at 7%, depends where you categorize it from, of course. All sorts of different ramps. It gets a lot easier towards the top. The riders have the worst part out of the way now, but a lot of the damage in terms of the time gaps have already been done. Samilov trying to recover some of that now, and it's not just the damage between the front group and the back group. We've seen it, so many riders surprisingly being dropped out, and it's just a small group now.
Well, when they actually crest the point where the points are given for the King of the Mountains classification, there is actually a bit of a plateau before it then plunges down the other side. So we've got about a 2-kilometer plateau, so it's not flat. That can actually make it even harder. It's not as if you can just zip your top up and then go down the other side. There is like a false flat over the top, which makes it hard. But 15 seconds now. I didn't expect this, I must admit. I thought they would let them dangle out there at around a minute, but they brought it back now.
1 kilometer to the top for CCC, and the 15-second of an advantage for this, what, 10, 12 strong group. More than 10 or 12 at the top. They are Russian flags, more Sampdoria flags, more Italian flags. It's a grand old atmosphere at the top of the Barba Gelata, the frozen beard climb. Thankfully, it's not that cold today at 1,115 meters. Otherwise, a few of your friends in the peloton might be having a bit of a problem as well.
They would indeed. We're going into today.
Here comes the attack then. This is the attack from Katusha. They're out there, they're looking for something from this stage, and it's Pavel Kochetkov on the attack in the Tour de Romandie just over a week ago. He can see the top of the climb very close, and he wants those points for the King of the Mountains competition.
That's a very, very good acceleration at all. No response at all. I think the only rider that tried to go with him was Diego Ulissi of Lampi Merida. He's the rider that can just see in the distance at 25 meters from the flying Russian, but a very, very strong attack. Looks pretty comfortable. Sat down now, churning away. Still, though, half a kilometre to the summit. Has he gone a little bit too early? But must admit, just looking at his face there and look at his style on the bike, he does look pretty composed and very, very strong.
Well, he's a versatile rider who seems to climb well, Pavel Kochetkov, 29 years of age now. He has quite a fast finish too as well, so if he gets out in front, gets over this, descends well, a very, very interesting rider to watch. At the minute, it looks as though he's thinking of nothing more than King of the Mountains points, but we'll have to see how this develops. A second season at Katusha now for him, after spending a little bit of time with the Atera development squad. A very, very late developer, but he's looking really, really good as we see our first Sardinian flank of this Giro d'Italia. Sardinian flag there, ready to cheer on Fabio Aru behind. I mentioned earlier it was a bit of argy-bargy, Virgil argy-bargy, between Tinkoff Saxo and Astana. 150 meters for Kochetkov to get over this, and yesterday, suggestion from Ivan Basso that Paolo Tiralongo, the domestique of Fabio Aru, former domestique of Alberto Contador, been a little cheeky saying that tomorrow we're going to attack Tinkoff Saxo. May have just been some silly words, but it certainly awoke the interest on the Italian television last night. Kochetkov is just about to go over this King of the Mountains and take maximum points.
Could be just a little bit of brinkmanship, bit of showmanship. But if Tinkoff Saxo have taken that literally, they've responded by putting riders on the front to shred the bunch and to reduce the possibility of anybody attacking Alberto Contador at the moment. It looks like the bunch, well, what's left of the bunch, I'd say around 60 or so riders. Many of the sprinters, or most of the strong sprinters, have now been detached and distanced by Tinkoff Saxo.
Ulissi coming over there. This is Esteban Chavez. Just behind him, Herrada. Jesus Herrada, of course, his brother Jose not riding this race. One of 3 sets of brothers in the Movistar team at the minute. You've got Dayer Quintana as well. His brother Nairo was a winner here last year. And of course, the Izaguirres. You've got Jon Izaguirre here. Gorka not riding, the 2 Basque riders. Peloton coming over very, very quickly behind. Couple of key mountain men dropped there for Richie Port on the second category climb of the Giro. Should he be concerned?
Yeah, it's well, they'll obviously look at that when they get back to the finish, but did look to be in difficulties, but significantly Michael Matthews there looked pretty good, and I also saw Simon Gerrans in the mix as well. 2 very fast finishes on Orica Green Edge, but the fact that Michael Matthews is there, Orica Green Edge will be very, very happy with that. Zardini tried to get back in contact with the back end of the peloton.
45 Ks to go. King of the Mountains points given out. Kochetkov will be our new leader at the end of the day. He's the new blue jersey. We await the stage finish today.
in association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
A very warm welcome back to stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. 43 kilometres remain. Ever so slight bit of ascending to go before we begin the big descent now. Big descent that lasts for quite a long time, almost half of the stage that remains. The final 7 kilometres, we've got a bit of undulating typical coast road. But as you can see, we're still very much in the Ligurian hills here. Home to a lot of fresh produce. The beans, the basil, used in making the pestos of the region.
There's nothing like a fresh bit of antipasti and a nice Italian hotel in the hills.
That's exactly what Mauro Vegni was referring to, and he was talking about Richie Port's caravan.
Maybe they'll bring it to Richie on a platter or something. I'm sure he won't miss out on the lovely cuisine this part of the world has to offer.
Heading towards the descent. Pavel Kochetkov attacking on the climb. And this is his time gap, 15 seconds on the chasing group, 33 seconds on the Maglia Rosa group, the pink jersey group. Now mathematics here, interesting, because we were told that a break in the front, lone rider, 1 or 2, 3 riders will have a lot better chance of getting some time out on the descent rather than the big group behind. Last 20 odd K flat, how much time does he need? Yeah,
I mean, it's going to be very difficult, I think, for one rider to stay out in front. But what he has got, he's got, as we see, Tossato and Rovni there, lovely slow motion picture offered to you there. But this is the thing, he can take his own line, but unless he knows the descent particularly well, given that the very technical, sinuous nature of the descent, it's very, very difficult to get right. But he doesn't have any riders around him, he's got space, and it's dry as well. I'm just thankful that it's dry. This would have been an extremely dangerous descent had it been wet. It's dangerous enough in the dry, but again, he does have the luxury to pick his own line. And Tinkoff Saxo not missing a beat. They're making sure Alberto Contador is in the right place. And just behind, you see the light blue jerseys of Astana, and then the black jerseys of Team Sky. So all of the GC contenders making sure that their main men are at the head of affairs and out of trouble. I would say it's be interesting to look back down the road, Rob, to see if there's many riders trying to get back on, but I think the time gaps are pretty significant.
Well, a lot of the sprinters not just dropped on the steep second category climb, but on the previous ramps as well, before we had the little descents into the bottom of that climb. You hear the screech of carbon fibre on the brakes there. This is Kochetkov. Not a bad little gap out at the minute.
He seems to be descending pretty well. The last check was 15 seconds to the breakaway behind, and here it is. Looks like Chavez has just gone off the front there, the little Colombian, descending very, very deftly. Great static shot of him rounding that bend. Look at the line they take, swing out to the left, then cut in through the apex of the corner. You learn so much. I mean, when I came into the professional ranks for the first time, I thought I could descend pretty well until I started riding races like Tirreno and the Giro, and then you really learn to descend. You descend very quickly. But look, everybody pretty much taking the same line. Nobody trying to cut up the inside. Swinging out to the right, swinging the bike left, then coming back in. It's quite beautiful to watch, in fact.
That's a skill in itself.
It is, it is.
20 seconds, another 5 for Kochetkov. In the meantime, the second group losing time to the Maglia Rosa group. 40 kilometers to go. This, by the way, is the second group on the road, 20 seconds back. Just behind them, you have the pink jersey of Michael Matthews, and you would still have to say at the minute, Orica Greenedge will be delighted with how things are panning out on the road today.
Well, absolutely great. They've got the leader on the road now, the Simon Clark. By virtue of those 2 second places in the hotspot sprints, has earned himself 4 seconds. So he's now 4 seconds in front of Michael Matthews on the GC. But again, things still very, very tight. And Michael Matthews now, when you look at, it'll be interesting once we get onto the flat roads, we'll perhaps be able to look at the composition of the riders left in that main group. But thinking at the riders I could see at the moment, the fastest finisher does appear to be Michael Matthews, if you ask me.
Just a few little wheel gaps opening up, and that's the thing in a descent here. If you are in a group, the man in front of you loses a couple of wheels, doesn't quite keep the wheel, you also find yourself cut back as well. You have to depend upon those who are in front of you in a descent to make sure you keep up with those at the front.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we say that, firstly that the roads are dry. The breakaway have got the luxury, the fact that they have a little bit more space, but you touched on the point that descending is a skill. It is a skill. It's something you can get better at. But there are some riders who don't like descending. They're a rider. I mean, one of the most prominent. Oh, there we go. That looks. It's
Pozzovivo who's down. What a nightmare start.
That doesn't look good at all.
And Domenico Pozzovivo down and looking very, very nasty. We really don't need to look at that. No, we really don't need to look at that. Well, Domenico Pozzovivo down and looking extremely hurt there. We've been in this region before, as we mentioned earlier today. Some pretty nasty consequences. I'm afraid that from experience that looks pretty horrible and extremely worrying. Let's cross our fingers and hope that Domenico Pozzovivo is okay.
It looked like the doctors they were on hand very, very quickly, so he'll be getting the best support he needs anyway at the moment. But it just shows descending is a dangerous game. It requires skill. It's part of bike racing.
Well, in the race in the meantime, 38 kilometers to go. This is the chasing group. Pavel Kochetkov is the man out there.
Look at the different styles the riders are taking down the descent. The gaps opening up. Other riders more competent than others.
Again, unfortunately, at Eurosport, we're in no control of the images that we're receiving here. That is Domenico Pozzovivo, who is down on the right-hand side, and that, I'm afraid, is all we're going to say about that. Pavel Kochetkov, 37.2 kilometers to go. Leader of this race, who said 29 years of age. Katusha rider who was racing in the Tour de Romandie last week, part of a winning team as well as Ineos Zakharin took the victory in the Swiss race.
Most of the King of the Mountains, this rider's fifth in the classification for the mountains in Romandie, so clearly on form. As we see the two Bardiani riders just at the back of this group. And this is the back end of the leaders group, the group containing race leader Michael Matthews. And just look at the gaps now between each rider. Just giving themselves that space should they need to break.
Man at the back, Zardini, as you were saying. Ethics quick step with a rider in here as well. Number 37 is Stefano Pirazzi. Of course, we've seen Tom Bonen getting dropped a little earlier on. Kochetkov, though, riding away. This is the descent again. So narrow, the roads. On the finish straight, we have one roundabout inside the final kilometre. 35 k's to go in the meantime for Kochetkov. And this is the chase.
Looks like Philippe Gilbert, just by the way he's tilting his head, he's got that really distinctive style. I think, I must admit, him and Greg Van Avermaet, from a face-on shot, have got some of the most distinctive styles in the peloton. You can pick them out very, very easily. But Philippe Gilbert picking his line through that corner. Great shot there. Chavez not too far behind in that white jersey.
Chavez riding really, really well here. And again, you've talked about Simon Clark. Simone Stortoni from Androni Giocattoli.
Some riders really being distanced off the back of this group here.
The gap continues to improve and increase for Kochetkov. Now 26 seconds at the start. We were talking around 15. This is Esteban Chavez, and again it's the situation with Domenico Pozzovivo. Again, once more on behalf of Eurosport, we apologise that we are not in control of the pictures that we're receiving from the host broadcaster. I, again, personally, from this point, agree with many of you that Pozzovivo deserves a little bit of dignity here. He's crashed. It looks very serious, but thankfully, as Matt's pointed out, the doctors are there and doing all they can to look after him. Well, with the race leader, Pavel Kochetkov. Again, it's really skilled, this. A long way down as well, and it is an extremely, extremely difficult climb, the one we've just been up to Barba Gelata for the third day of a Giro d'Italia. We're talking 12% ramps up to 1,000 metres, and of course an almost 20-kilometre descent as well here. Chavez, company from Gilbert, Clark behind him, Patersky and Samalov still there too.
There's no real chase behind. I mean, on a descent like this, it's just a matter of dropping down as quickly as you can. There won't be any necessarily relaying on the front. You just look at the speeds. It's not one of those descents where you can put it in a big gear and actually pedal. It's very, very technical indeed. But this rider out in front, Kochekov of Katusha, riding this descent very, very skillfully, taking some good lines and opening up a lead slowly but surely on the chasers behind, primarily being led by the Belgian Philippe Gildet, the former world champion, of course, riding on the BMC squad. Did identify him actually as one of the favourites for today's stage. So even should it come all back together again, surely one rider will definitely be in the mix. And Chavez also there, descending very, very skillfully indeed too.
Mauro Finetto at the back in the white and grey for Southeast. Again, no real coverage towards the front of the peloton at the minute. Tinkoff Saxo still en masse, still guiding things. Astana with a full team there, by the way, as remember we've seen a few riders drop for Richie Port and Sky. That has been a little worrying.
Yeah, it looked like Tinkoff Saxo had 5 riders left at the front. Jules Jensen dropping back, Rovny dropping back. Is now left with Kreuziger. Also left with former Giro d'Italia winner, of course, Ivan Basso, also there, as is Mick Rogers too.
Ivan Basso was one of those men again caught up in the crash yesterday who ended up around 30 seconds back. Domenico Pozzovivo is at least off to hospital now. Repeat once more, there are varying cultural sensitivities around us to seeing those sorts of images. It's when I've lived and worked in France and Italy and Spain, I've had numerous arguments in newsrooms about showing those types of things, and of course certainly from an Anglophone point of view in the United Kingdom, in the Republic of Ireland, I know it's not something that we are used to seeing or particularly wish to see. Once again, I'll reiterate the fact that Eurosport has no control, unfortunately, over these pictures. We just send our best wishes to Domenico Pozzovivo, and the good thing from that image is that he's off to hospital and being cared for by all the correct professionals. 31.5 kilometres remaining of stage 3 in the meantime. Still watching the back wheel of Mauro Finetto as he descends on the way down to Sestri Levante, which is our destination today.
Yeah, he's the last rider in this group. Moto just behind him. Try not to get too distanced.
And we can see Tinkoff Saxo heading things on the descent. Whilst this descent continues, we're off for a quick commercial break. We shall see you all again in just a minute on the home of cycling. Images of Domenico Pozzovivo, who very sadly has crashed and looks in quite a bad way, being taken off to hospital. This is the Giro d'Italia stage 3. I think we're going to get a replay of what happened here.
This looks like his front wheel went from under him, which happens from time to time, but it obviously fell very, very awkwardly. Sometimes you put your arms out in front, other times, because it happened so quickly, there's no time for you to even react, to put your arms out. It looks like, unfortunately, most of the fall was taken on his head, but as he's in the ambulance, he's now being taken off to hospital as quickly as possible, so all the best to him.
27.5 kilometres to go. Tinkoff Saxo at the front of things. Astana just behind. Pavel Kochetkov riding down to what could be a very good opportunity to put himself in the frame for a stage win at the Giro d'Italia. The Katusha rider riding for the team that has been in fantastic form over the last couple of months. Chasing group is on your screen now.
Kochetkov are part of an immensely successful Katusha team this year. They really have got wins from all over the place. Just put himself in a very, very good position on the road at the moment.
This is what happened so far today with Pavel Kochetkov attacking on the only classified climb in the second half of the stage, the hardest classified climb that we've had so far in this Giro d'Italia on day 3. Second category, very, very, very good climb. He went over first, took the King of the Mountains points. His reward so far at the end of the day will be the blue climber's jersey so far. He's since gone out and extended an advantage on the descent before, and we've also had some pretty harrowing images behind the crash for Domenico Pozzovivo out of this group as well. He went down, has since been taken to hospital. I can tell you that Italian national television are reporting that he is breathing for himself now. That is the latest that we have on the incident. .30 seconds to the leader of the race and the chasing group. He's been extending that advantage all the way down, and so far over the last 10 kilometres, Matt, he's put another 15 seconds into this group, and he almost has now an entire minute on the peloton.
He's riding very, very well. As I said, the advantage of riding in front is that you can pick your own line. If you look at him as a rider, he's although he climbs very well, he's built like more of a rouleur as well. So clearly at home, you know, when the road flattens out a little bit, looks very powerful, very efficient looking on the bikes, and very, very aerodynamic too. Just look at the way he sits there. He's got good poise and placement, even power distribution on the bike. Looks very, very stylish indeed. And he's a solid rider, been around for a while, 29 years of age. Buoyed by the fact the team have had a good season, and has got a free rein today. Whatever happens out on the road, with only just under 25 kilometres to go, he's going to be on the podium in the Maglia Azzurra as a leader of the King of the Mountains. But at the moment, looking very good, potentially for the stage win too. What's going to happen behind?
Yeah, Maglia Azzurra seems wrong colours today with red and pink before. Azzurra, of course, many of you know, what followed Italian football throughout the years will know that the Azzurri are the Italian national football team because they play in that blue. And the Maglia Azzurra here, the blue jersey at the Giro d'Italia, means that it is for the King of the Mountains.
Yeah, and the Squadra Azzurra is the Italian national cycling team as well. So, yeah.
David de la Cruz at the back here, Catalan rider riding for Ethics Quickstep.
Just drifting back, perhaps wanting to take a couple of bottles before the finale. Bear in mind, only 23 Ks to go. The riders can't feed under 20 kilometres to go. Excuse me. Unless, of course, decreed by the race commissaires. And you often find that rule is put to one side in particularly hot conditions and on mountaintop finishes. But there you go, there's the main bunch, the main peloton, about 50 or 60 riders there passing under the 25 kilometres to go board. But around a kilometre up the road is the Russian, and here he is, Pavel Kochetkov. Another one of these numerous towns peppering the route, pink, celebrating the Giro as it passes through. And now we're seeing a little bit more organisation behind now. This group starting to relay after essentially descending as quickly as they can. Now the road flattens out, and we've got this long run into the finish. We're going to see a little bit of cohesion and organisation behind it.
Gilbert, Samilov, Hansen, Paterski, Ulissi and Jesus Herrada are there alongside Esteban Chavez, Gavazzi, who's a really, really fast finisher, as is Simon Clark, as is Davide Villela. If this group can contest things out and get back on at the front, we're in for a really, really interesting final to the end of the stage. We've just reached Monleone, which is where the route flattens out. It's inside the municipal district of Chicagna. Chicagna is the little town that you saw on the start of our coverage today when Juan Antonio Fletcher was just ending his descent. Some potassium in that banana there for David de la Cruz.
That's a classic shot, isn't it? The banana, half-eaten banana stuck out of the back pocket. Looks like quite a ripe banana as well. If you look closely at the skin colour, slightly brown, easier to digest. So they've got their banana science bang on today, have Ethics Quickstep.
Banana science to marginal gains.
Indeed.
Simone Stortoni at the back for Androni as the Movistar rider. Just signalling for the car is the Costa Rican Andrea Amador. Peloton now reaches Monleon, and you can see still lots of men for Astana at the front, lots of men for Tinkoff Saxo as well. Sky, despite losing a couple up the hill, still do have a fairly decent human shield around Richie Port at the moment as well. Ethics Quickstep will have a job to do today They've got to look after Rigoberto Urán, already a men down after losing Peter Seri yesterday. 1:10 behind the leader of the race, 21 to the chasing group, who have gained 9 seconds on the sole leader, Kochetkov.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism. In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
Pavel Kochetkov inside 20 kilometers to go on stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia, trying to get rid of any extra weight in his pockets. He's taken all the food he can. He has one bidon left in front of him. He has these riders breathing down his neck on the road. 16 seconds. They've got another 5 seconds out of him whilst we've been away at the commercial break. Inside 20Ks, most of this is fairly flat roads. They have almost a minute on the peloton chasing behind. It seems increasingly so, unless there's a severe acceleration from someone behind who wants to win this stage, Matt, that it could well be played out between the front group now.
It's at the moment 19.2 kilometres to go. It's looking pretty good. I mean, the rider up front, Pavel Kochetkov, is riding very strongly, but now we've got that cohesion in the chase group behind, with a lot, especially with BMC, Philippe Gilbert, everybody's riding. The 2 riders from CCC, Sprani Polkovice, riding hard too. It's quality riders in that group. They are eating into his lead, so I think we might see that come back together. But it's whether or not any other teams join in the chase, because Tinkoff Saxo here, I don't necessarily have chasing the group, they're just setting a hard tempo, and no help at all yet from anybody else.
Interesting story that is about to play out on the road. Pavel Kochetkov. These are his time gaps. 18 to the chasing group. 1:01 to the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey. Anything still is possible here in terms of a scenario of what might happen. They're rolling on and through really well. Matt, they all realise in this group that to have any chance of winning the stage, they all have to contribute equally.
And they are. There's not one passenger, as you can just see Harada there, just jumping back on the wheel. This is a pretty strong group. Adam Hansen still there for Lotto, their number 105. The birthday boy, could this be the day for him? What an unbelievable story that would be. But no, that group working very well. Nobody sandbagging at all. So it's just up to this man out in front to try and hold on, but still looking remarkably smooth and strong. Has jettisoned any excess weight at all, and that's more psychological. I don't know how much advantage that actually gives you. But if you've got anything in your pocket that you know you're not going to eat in the final kilometres, it's just one of those little psychological things. You just jettison it off. But at the moment, it's all about power to drag, because it's quite a flat finish to the run-in along the coast to the finish.
Yeah, 35-gram energy bar. How much is that going to affect? Not so much. It's more psychological than anything. Adam Hansen on his birthday, though, in with a right old chance. However, with Hansen, you feel he's got to get there on his own now, don't you?
Yeah, when you look at this break, you know, Ulissi is very strong. Philippe Gilbert is very strong as well. He's just sat at the back there in the red, the former world road champion, the only rider in this move for BMC. But Simon Clark is very, very good. Look back through his Palmares. He can finish very well out of a small group. Finished strongly last year in Tirreno Adriatico. So could be dangerous, but he's best placed on the general classification at the moment of the riders in the front group. Actually, the virtual Maglia Rosa on the road.
Maciej Paterski Back towards the car, and he's getting a BMC beat on as well. Philippe Gilbert putting his arm. So what are you doing helping him?
That was quite interesting. You did see, it was quite interesting earlier on. You saw Petersky and particularly Branislav Samolov actually gesturing to some of the other teams to try and get a beat on. But that happens, you know. To be honest with you, if I was Philippe Gilbert, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, he needs these two riders. They're going to bring back the rider in front, and they need an energy gel, and they haven't got the team car there. Hey, what's the harm? And he might need a favour in the future too.
He certainly may well. I think the only problem with it being Petersky is he's one of the main men who could potentially beat him to the line. He is a direct rival. We're not talking about perhaps an Esteban Chavez who's excellent in the mountains, but may not be able to mix it in the sprint. You never know after a hard day's racing, but we're certainly talking the likes of Gavazzi, Clark, Fernandez. I'm not too sure. I certainly don't think that it's his type of play. Herrada is the man here at the front, pardon me, but Vilela's fast enough to the line. I'll tell you what though, look, there is not much left of this group behind. It is a much smaller group than we imagine. It's
About
basically the whole Tinkoff team, the whole Astana team, and a few other riders from different teams.
Yeah, I counted roughly about 60 riders there, but there's a bit of sportsmanship. Philippe Gilbert giving a bit of his power bar there to Mr. Herrada.
Herrada it is.
And that often happens, especially when you've been, these guys have been part of the break pretty much all day. Although it is a shorter stage, it is in your interest to encourage the other riders, perhaps give them a drink from the bottle if you need to, and that will keep that rider, well, keep that group neat and working as a team. Whether they've got different objectives, from time to time, you need to make sure you've got people on your side, and they are first. They need to get back the Flying Russian, who's still out in front at the moment.
Just some speculation we've been trying to get confirmed. It seems that Giovanni Tredici, the doctor of the Giro d'Italia, has confirmed that Domenico Pozzovivo is out of serious life-threatening danger. 15 kilometres remain on this stage 3 of the Giro d'Italia. Very, very interesting composition of things out front. Behind, we have a group of teams who've started to really put the hammer down in the chase now. It's almost single file all the way.
You can just see we've got another rider now joining the front. That looks like Peter Weining, actually.
Will he be trying to slow things down here for Clark, or are they more reliant on Michael Matthews? Do they know that because he's here and he's no rival, that the best choice for us is to bring this back and make sure that Matthews tries to win in a sprint?
Weining is not slowing that down. He's helping Tinkoff Saxo trying to bring this back. Just look at him on his bike. That isn't going to front and slowing it down. Weining is an engine himself. He's no stranger to wins either. Took a stage, the Giro d'Italia himself, but at the moment is trying to bring back this breakaway. Although they do have the leader on the road, perhaps they want the more realistic opportunity for them to win the stage is to try and bring this back for Michael Matthews, who, although we don't know the exact composition of that bunch of around 60, 65 riders, I know that Matthews is in there, possibly the quickest, because we've seen most of the sprinters distanced on the very difficult parcours today.
We'll get the latest time check between Kochetkov, the leader, and those chasing behind.
I think he's pulled out. I think it went down to 15. There we go.
21 now. There's Gavazzi on the front in the middle. These guys here cannot start thinking of individual ambition just yet. It is far too early for that. They have to keep rolling through, keep working hard.
What is quite interesting, though, is the fact we've got Chavez now on the front, and we've got Peter Weining joining in the chase. I don't quite understand. Surely, if they're trying to bring this back, and they put Weining on the front to help bring this back, why is Chavez rolling through? I don't know. I mean, can't tell you what is being said on the radio, but I thought that Chavez now and Clarkey would be well, best place to sit on, perhaps.
Kochetkov, 14 Ks to ride on. Look behind in the meantime from that group. Herrada doesn't seem committed anymore. He's saying he can see the peloton. I'm not going to ride with you anymore. And Adam Hansen decides to attack. He's not waiting, and this could be his real opportunity now if he can bridge this gap. He's being chased down straight away by Chavez, the Orica Green Edge rider. How is this going to play out?
Well,
in fact, it's Clark, pardon me. Yeah,
it's Clark who's trying to bridge across to Adam Hansen. But to remember, Adam Hansen, although he's a quite remarkable, resilient stage race rider, he's won the stages in the Tour of Italy. Remember that stage where he held the peloton last year in the Vuelta a España? You know, that was a remarkable show of strength and power. this man isn't just a rider who gets through Grand Tours. He's a race winner and an absolute thoroughbred, and a real stinging attack there from that group.
Adam Hansen out, Simon Clark following him. Johnny Zaguirre at the back here, who is the Spanish champion. 2:03 is Manuel ʻdʒiːro. A lot of you understandably very worried about Domenico Pozzovivo. As we announced just a moment ago, we had news from the Giro doctor, and this has been confirmed by the team. According to the doctor of the race, Pozzovivo has been taken away to hospital conscious and lucid, breathing for himself and in communication with those who are helping, which is great news after what was a very worrying sight.
It's very difficult. It just shows, it just shows how dangerous this sport is. Part of the beauty of cycling is the fact that it's a dangerous sport, but sometimes things happen, and it just shows, you know, that they put on a show, but it is remarkably dangerous. And I'm just glad that he's in the right place, and the fact he's breathing and conscious, and all the very best to him for a speedy recovery, and of course the rest of his team as well.
Paterski, Clark, Hansen. Chasing group. Paterski still there, always a danger, and they have him in the sights up the front.
This is a very interesting splinter. They're working far better together now. They do have the Russian in the sights. They're only about 5 or 6 seconds. I would say now that they are going to bridge that gap across. It's just whether they'll then work as a foursome, because it's still at the front. It's Peter Vini.
You saw, and you can just see that little pink banner there, and that's a local intermediate sprint that's been arranged by the mayor, and there's a financial prize. It's taken by Kochetkov. And you get these along the routes of Grand Tours. Certainly at the Giro d'Italia, it seems to be a very traditional thing in small towns, and obviously all chipped into a pot, and Kochetkov's going to take some beer money home tonight.
Yeah, it's always a bonus, isn't it? But what I love is the way that all of the towns, regardless of their size, you know, take the race to their hearts. All the roundabouts are decorated with pink flowers, sprayed up bicycles, pink banners, signs, bunting, balloons. Absolutely fantastic. And again, it really is wonderful. If you ever get a chance to go and visit the Giro d'Italia or any of the Grand Tours, to be honest with you, go there, soak up the culture, soak up the atmosphere. It's an experience that you will never ever forget.
It's a tough experience, an explosive and very intense experience for all the riders out there today. A short stage, a stage full of action, of course. It's been raced non-stop since the off, really. Very, very fast day today so far. At the minute, we're approaching one of the fastest time schedules for the arrival as well. 11 kilometers to go. Kochetkov is about to be caught, it seems, by Paterski, Clark and Hansen. And that will make it a very interesting quartet up the front. Another question that has to be asked here, what does Kochetkov have left in his locker?
I think he'll take a look over his shoulder. There's a slight rise here. It looks like the junction is going to be made in the next kilometre or 100 metres or so. I suggest he looks around and perhaps has a rest. He might work with him, but maybe for 4 or 5 kilometres, he's perfectly justified in sitting on. Remember, he attacked over the top of the climb. He's been away for around 20 kilometres on his own. He'll probably take the opportunity to sit on for a bit before then perhaps contributing to the break.
Pavel Kochetkov joined by 3 friends chasing on behind. For the minute, they've got to be friends still. Cannot be enemies to the end unless they wish to be caught. Paterski is their second wheel. Hansen is the man at the front in the red, the Australian.
Smiling away there as he does.
It's his birthday, of course.
He is one of the most charismatic riders in the peloton. He's always got time for the press. I've had numerous conversations with him when I've been out on races. And I know a few of you know, but many of you might not know, he actually makes his own shoes. So the shoes he's wearing today, he's handmade himself from carbon fibre. And does actually sell them, but they're rather expensive. But no, that's what he does. He's a really interesting guy. He does a lot of quite interesting tweets and plays around with Photoshop. But yeah, undoubtedly one of the friendliest and most interesting chaps running out there at the moment.
Lives in the Czech Republic, doesn't he?
He does indeed.
Makes his own shoes. I think the reason he puts them up for sale is because there's a UCI rule that everything that's used has to be for sale.
Exactly.
And I think he puts them up there at very prohibitive prices. 10 kilometres to go.
Don't think Clark is contributing to this move. He's obviously been radioed around. He's now sat at the back. You saw Hansen swing into second place behind Paterski, but you got Wiening at the front. So Clark now has got a free ride to the finish. He's the virtual Maglia on the road. 10 kilometres to go.
16 seconds. Weining's done a great job at the front, and you were right. He was very much not slowing that down. That is some brilliant work by Peter Weining. Former pink jersey wearer, remember, on the Giro d'Italia. The last time that Alberto Contador was here, 2011, he wore the Giro before he lost it to Contador later on in the race. 4 at the front, and with what's going on behind, you've got to say the days are numbered now.
It looks like it. It looks like that is a pretty determined chase. These riders have been out all day, although they're riding very, very well together. There's 4 in this move, but the man riding last wheel, Simon Clark, not contributing because there's no doubt what Orica Green Edge want to do today, and that sets up Michael Matthews, who's wearing the pink jersey as race leader, to try and go for the stage win, and he's pretty well placed at the moment. Still a little bit of work to do. 8.9 kilometres to go.
Well, he won in pink last year when he was up there on Monte Cassino after what had been a pretty horrible day as far as crashes were concerned.
Well, that was a tough finish. I mean, that wasn't a classic sprinters finish at all. I mean, the bunch was split.
Really, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, there was a big crash before. It was very wet, difficult conditions, but it was well placed and took out a very, very famous win there in the pink jersey. That's something that doesn't happen very, very often. That often see race leaders winning stages.
It was a tale of the 2 Aussies at the end as well, because you had Cadel Evans on one side going for the win, and a sprinter Michael Matthews as well. And it just shows the versatility of Michael Matthews. He isn't a pure sprinter, as we said, and you know, we perhaps didn't expect him to beat the likes of Greipel yesterday. We know that on a good day that he can, but today they'd be very, very surprised if there's any serious rival to him if this all comes back together.
No, definitely. I think it's difficult to see Ryder Hijsdal in the mix there in the centre. Again, not a known finisher, but he'll be glad he's in the front after his travails yesterday, getting caught behind a crash and losing 57 seconds. Of course, a previous Giro winner himself. But looking at the bunch behind, interestingly, Astana, 8 riders still in the mix, so that shows how well they're riding.
And they haven't had to hit the front all day. It has been Tinkoff Saxo since the off. They have been all there, lined up on the front. I have to say, even if they do anything, and we don't really expect them to do anything at the end of today, but they have ridden nothing short of magnificent.
They have. It's Paulino is now on the front, leaning on his wheel. Then Ivan Basso sat behind, but no, they've set a remarkable tempo today on a very, very difficult stage. As we head back to the front, 8 kilometres to go. Still the rider at the back, sandbagging, but rightly so. They have the tactical advantage. They have a man in pink. They have arguably the fastest finisher in the group that's left. But Clark at the moment, as the situation is the virtual Maglia Rosa. Took those time bonuses earlier on. But what's happening in between? Has that group been caught yet? That's what we need to know, where the camera will pan around.
They're not far away. The gap was 16 seconds at the last official time check. Heading now towards Chiavari, just a kilometre further down the road. That is where the stage will finish, will start, pardon me, tomorrow. Oh, look at this. 9 seconds, they have them in sight on the nice, long, white, straight road. And that invariably means that it is that as we hit the sea once again. Chiavari, very close to Lavagna, which is got a big mining history, slate mining in fact. There was a Giro stage finish down at Lavagna. Jan Zvorada winning in 1994. Look at the crowds out here.
This is great, isn't it?
Well, the reward for Kochetkov, who's just about to hit the front and look behind now, realising that almost the game is up for them, will be a blue jersey today for the King of the Mountains.
He's still not giving up. I thought he might sit on a little bit, but he hasn't. He's certainly putting the work in today, driving this group in front. It is a tenuous lead. Will we see now a counter-attack from one of the other riders in the last few kilometres of this race?
Into the Tigullio Gulf. Chiavari, where we start from tomorrow, heading to La Spezia. And it's that road all along the sea that takes us to our finish today at Sestri Levante. What's left of the peloton have the breakaway in their sights. Interesting to see exactly what Orica Green Edge do from behind here, Matt. Now they've got still Tinkoff Saxo on the front. Do they take it up at any point with the pink jersey, or do they just wait and sit on and as long as Tinkoff Saxo want to do the job, which we presume is into the last 3 kilometres to get Alberto Contador nice and safe there?
Well, they've put a token rider on the front in the form of Peter Weening, but as long as Tinkoff continue to ride, why would you put anybody else at the front? If Tinkoff are riding, okay, and you're helping sustain that, they've only got 5 riders left at the front, including Alberto Contador. But if Tinkoff continue to ride, why else would you contribute if the pace is that high? You can just leave it to the other team. Remember, this is day 3, only the 3rd stage, and already we're seeing Tinkoff Saxo taking the race up. As we see, that's Richie Porte moving up on the outside. The first time we've really seen the Australian, the little Australian from Tasmania, moving up into about 10th position, making sure he keeps himself out of trouble. And just to his right is the pink jersey of Michael Matthews.
Interesting rider who's still there for me is Francesco Gavazzi. He was in that break earlier on and he decided not to join the chase. He's come back, he's just on the right side of Richie Porte now, right on the wheel of Michael Matthews. A very, very good finisher, Francesco Gavazzi. Rides for Southeast. Interesting to see how his legs are after that little bit of time out in the break today. Nervous look behind from Adam Hansen. Moves over to the right-hand side. I think they're ready to be caught now. 5 kilometres to go. They're all looking around.
Well, it's basically a straight running now. Very untechnically demanding finish. Just runs all the way along the coast. And just before the finish, there's a slight kink in the road, but essentially be able to see the finish. So this should be very, very exciting sprint. And just look at the foliage and the trees to the left-hand side. No real discernible wind to make too much of a distance. So that won't difference. Sorry. So that won't be a factor. And the junction now almost made, and still it's Tinkoff Saxo, no other teams coming to the front. BMC massing on the right-hand side.
Kachetkov's going to go for another one. Kachetkov says it's not over yet. Another little dig off the front. Clark is the man to chase him, and again he will probably just sit on, and sit on all the way.
And Clark just tucked in the slipstream of the flying Russian, who opens up a bit of a gap. Fair play to Kachetkov. He's going to be wearing the blue jersey as mountains leader, but that isn't enough. Still trying for the stage win too, still trying to the very last.
Kachetkov in the front, Simon Clark waiting, and Simon Clark is waiting, if you're tuning in late, because Michael Matthews is just behind. A matter of seconds, less than 10 seconds to the pink jersey, the race leader in his same team, who would be the big favourite from a bunch sprint behind. 4 kilometres to go until we reach the finish line in Sestri Levante. It's more or less straight all the way now. One roundabout with 850 metres to go. And after that, it is all straight to the line. 6.5 metres wide. Good enough, more than good enough for this bunch. And we are all back together again. Peter Weening at the front. Simon Clark is going to join him to try and help off. Ivan Basso on the front as well for Tinkoff Saxo, as we come to the front with Ondrej Zeitz there too for Astana.
Look at that, you saw Simon Clark, rather than dropping back into the bunch, thinking his day's over, he's willing to work again, tried to drop onto the wheel of his teammate Peter Weening, was elbowed off the wheel a little bit there by Ivan Basso, but look at Clark looking around, sussing out the situation, seeing what riders are there, making sure he can get sight of his team leader, Michael Matthews. We know Gerrans is in there as well. So I think it's going to be all about Michael Matthews. Perhaps they'll use Gerrans as part of the lead out, but the willingness of Clark to stay near the front to help his team leader is absolutely admirable.
Good job as well from Orica Green Edge. I know we've been praising Tinkoff Saxo today. They've done a super job. Perhaps not yesterday. Matthews just failing in the finale, but it was a hard sprint to judge. Very, very hard sprint to judge 24 hours ago with the little uphill sections. Svitsov comes to the front for Sky. Svitsov is just going to pull it out a little. And he's going to be chased straight away by Philippe Gilbert. Just speeds things up a bit and makes life a little more difficult for Tinkoff. That's the first time we've seen them off the front of the peloton since we started today.
Well, the thing is, because of this running, because the speed is high, but it's not exactly the same as a raging bunch sprint when you're riding at 50, 60 kilometers an hour. Virtually impossible unless you're a rider like Fabian Cancellara to break away. Because the speed's a little bit less, this does provide an opportunity for riders to think they can go clear. That's why we saw an attack on the left-hand side. Philippe Gilbert was very close to it. But what makes it difficult is the fact it's essentially a long, straight running. But there are these little rises in the road that give riders that little opportunity to think, perhaps I can do it.
Davide Formolo on the left-hand side in the black and green, the very young Italian in his first Giro d'Italia, just making his way to the front. Orica Green is desperate to try and keep the pace high enough to prevent the attacks that Matt Stevens was talking about. We're in the final 2 kilometres now. Those nerves will start to come and play a part again. Certainly for the general classification contenders, they don't want crashes and they don't want to lose any more time.
Exactly, they certainly don't.
Of course, crashes now inside these last few kilometres aren't going to be too much of a worry. However, of course, they don't want the damage of being hurt. Exactly.
Well, there's a little, almost like a touch of elbows there. There's this tunnel they go through. It is lit from the right-hand side. The light's shining through.
So just under a kilometre.
Riding in tunnels is very difficult, especially when most of the riders are wearing sunglasses. The light changes very, very quickly. Fortunately, they have the natural light to look at. So positioning in a tunnel, absolutely vital, especially so close towards the finish. This could be a very interesting, sketchy, yet exciting finale.